Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome back to day 72 of the war in Ukraine. As many of y'all may have seen, the short clips on this channel have now taken a new format, and I've decided to compile all of the short videos into one slightly longer video with a little bit more descriptions, and that kind of served as the day 72 summary in a nutshell for everyone who couldn't really watch the stream tonight. It was met with a great amount of success, and so that will be the format that all of the short clips follow from here on. With that, I'd also like to remind everyone that this week's limited edition merch run, what's the name of that limited edition merch run again, Matthew, real quick? He's watching you?
Yeah, he's watching you, sort of like the World War II poster.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, everyone, I got mixed up there. I was thinking about two different posters, but our limited edition merch run, He's Watching You, is still on the store, but it will be going down in 3 hours. It will be put off the store at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to get some if you want to support the channel and get something neat out of it. And also, 10% of the profits will go to one of the Sunday night fundraisers. We have done it before, and we are, of course, incredibly proud to say that in total so far we have raised $166,000 for nonprofits and charities helping out Ukraine. Is of course something I'm incredibly proud of, and I think that our entire community is super proud of because it's a massive achievement. With that, we're going to go over the schedule for tonight's news. Starting off, we're actually going to cover the location unknowns first tonight. We actually have an incredibly high number of them, around 17, I believe. We will then take 3 questions from the chat, and then we'll move on to cover a video from the very beginning of the war, from the first hours of it, which hasn't been seen until right now. We will then move on into Russia, where I'm going to show y'all that Russian casualties are piling up around the entirety of the nation, and so it is showing that the Russians are actually taking heavy losses. And it's also showing one of the things that I said earlier about like we saw a whole bunch of Russian graves in one village. I said, how many other villages is like this? And we've actually gotten an answer. And so then we're actually going to move back down towards the Belgrade area, cover the Belgrade news, and also the Kharkiv news in one giant group. Then we're going to pause once again to take 3 questions from the chat in between the Kharkiv area and moving down towards the Donbass. We'll then cover the Donbass news, the Mariupol news, and the remainder of the Southern Front news, as well as the international news, all in one group. And then we'll return to the question segment. But before we actually move to the question segment, we have one last bit of news, which is the address from President Zelensky, which will signal the end of today's news. And so with that, let's get into the location unknowns. Starting off today, we've had a very interesting location unknown, where we can actually see that the switchblades have arrived in Ukraine and are being used effectively. Here we can see the aftermath of one of them being used and the remains of one of the switchblades. So as you can see here, the switchblade is actually incredibly small based off of the size of this guy's hand. It's probably about 1.5 to 2 feet long. Although I can't really get a precise measurement. Of course, you can have a giant hand or a small hand. And you know what they say about big hands, big gloves. And so we can see here some remnants of this little switchblade, and hopefully it was used incredibly effectively. But we don't have any more pictures beyond that. This is all we can see. And another thing I'd like to note is that something that was interesting to me looking at this picture in great detail, if we go down here to the bottom, is that this picture actually shows that there are just some standard screws in the side of the switchblade, and for this to be quote-unquote classified, I thought it would have been a little bit more high-tech than using screws, but then again, it is a suicide drone in a way, so it's not really like it requires the best tech. It will pretty much fly into something and then blow up. So, of course, it is good to see that the switchblades have made it to the front, and they are being used, although we're not really sure how effective they are at this moment. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Boldhana SPG being used in combat. So here's the video, and then we're actually going to go into a little bit of an aside real quick to take a better look at what a Boldhana is. So as we can see, it's actually very similar looking to a Caesar SPG, but let's pull up a Boldhana SPG, and let's take a look at it. Let me make sure. Boldhana. Okay, I'm sorry about that correction, everyone. It's a Boldhana. So this is actually a Ukrainian domestically made version of the Caesar SPG that we saw the French giving to the Ukrainians. Pretty much the whole entire principle behind this vehicle is that they have the towed artillery piece mounted onto the truck, and the truck will then move it into position. The setup time becomes much shorter with the artillery piece already mounted onto the chassis of the truck. They'll then set it up, fire a few rounds, then pack it back up in a very short amount of time and take off. It makes the shoot and scoot aspect of the artillery much quicker, and therefore it's much more effective against counter battery fire, because by the time the other side, well, the enemy's artillery is able to kind of like hone in on the position where that fire came from, this truck is already well gone from that area and miles away. And so with that, it's of course very interesting to see that the Ukrainians actually have their own version of a Caesar SPG. I didn't actually know that they had something like this until this video came out. Once again, I do want to tell everyone I'm not an expert on everything, so some things like this are new to me as well. And so we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians targeting Russian vehicles again. Some of y'all may be wondering, maybe the Russians are trying to do some kind of weapon experiments here. Maybe they're trying to face up Russian tanks against Ukrainian artillery and anti-tank guided missiles and see how they're doing. So far, if that is the study that they're trying to conduct through all of these tanks being hit, the answer is not very well, but it looks like the Russians want to make sure one more time. So here's the video of them once again seeing if their tanks can withstand Ukrainian artillery, and the answer is apparently not. Now we can see the artillery raining down inside of the village. Onto the Russian vehicles, we can see that it's getting pretty close. It looks like that may have actually hit one of the vehicles, although I couldn't really see it all too well. But we do see a small fire brewing up back there, which may tell us that it did hit a vehicle. We can see that the drone is still looking in that location. And I'm not really sure exactly what kind of drone is being used, but now we can see two Russian T-72B3s moving down this road, and one moving in reverse through this opening in the fence. Now, something interesting to know about T-72s is that that is about the fastest their reverse speed allows them to go. I think they only have one reverse gear, and so in terms of firing and then retreating, retreat's not really an option, because I believe that is the fastest that a T-72 can go in reverse. I may be incorrect about that. It may be able to go a little bit faster, but the reverse speed is abysmal compared to most Western tanks. We can now see an artillery shell landing somewhere in that village again. I'm not really sure if it hit a vehicle. The footage was really rapidly cut to that spot, so I couldn't really see, but we can see something smoldering at the bottom of the screen out of view. We can now see more shells landing around this house. And with that, that's the end of the video. Of course, it's incredible to see that the Ukrainians are still conducting effective artillery strikes on Russian units, and hopefully they can continue to do so. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a sweet dog. And everyone on this channel knows, and has known for an incredibly long time, that I love to include in my videos of sweet dogs. One, because it gives all of us a reprieve from the horrors of war, and it kind of gives everyone a little bit of a breather for a second. So here's one of the dogs that the Ukrainians have on the front lines with them. It looks like a German Shepherd. It may be a Belgian Shepherd. I'm not exactly an expert on those two different breeds. They look the same to me, but here he is. And I have to mute it because it has copyrighted music, but that's a good dog. We actually, when I was a kid, there was actually a dog that lived on my street that looked just like this one, and his name was Dominic. He was a German Shepherd, and he was an incredibly nice dog too. So this dog reminds me of him. And Dominic's dead now. It's been a couple of years. He's for sure dead. He was very old last we saw him. And so it's very nice to see this dog on the front. And it's good to know that the Ukrainians have great pals with them and that are probably doing incredibly good jobs, just like Patron. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a medical drone arriving in Ukraine. This medical drone was actually acquired through money gained through a fundraiser, much like the fundraisers we run on stream, but this fundraiser was called Alive Soldiers of Ukraine. I'm not really sure if this is a GuideStar fundraiser system. I would like to fundraise for them now, seeing that they've actually gotten something of considerable worth. Apparently, this drone is able to carry 16 kilograms of weight and is able to fly for 1 hour in any given direction. It is a huge drone, and I would like to know 16 kilograms to pounds. How many pounds is that? So it can carry 35 pounds of equipment. Not bad. I mean, like, our drone can only carry like a gram or something, so this is a step up from our drone that we use in filming. So I mean, like, that's really impressive, and it is good to know that the stuff that we're doing, like here on this channel, fundraising, is actually making some kind of difference out there, because without that kind of fundraising from the entirety of the world, this drone may have never made it over there, or may have never even been purchased in the first place to then be sent over there. So it's great to see that that is something that fundraisers have allowed for, and hopefully it's put to great use, and maybe will help to resupply the defenders of Mariupol, considering they're in a terrible situation right now. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a captured / destroyed T-72B3. I couldn't really tell from their talking if they were actually planning on doing anything with the tank, like reusing it, but we can see that it took a decent amount of damage, and so here's the video of the Ukrainians posing around their brand new T-72B3. It looks like it's had some mileage put on it, and it is in used condition, but the Ukrainians are happy nonetheless to just have a new one.
Слава Україні! Гляньте, який затрофеїли танк. Це тепер Шумахера умовляємо, щоб він забрав його. А він балований, каже, він не дуже гарний, колір не подобається.
Я тобі скажу, якби ви хоча б колеса накачали, щоб тиск був рівномірний. Розумієш? Да, а так, ну що ж це його брати, якщо тиск в шинах нерівномірно розподілить. Ні, резину буде їсти.
Та вже поїла, ти ж бачиш.
Скажете.
So as you can see, we're going to pause the video right here. A pretty sizable amount of damage. It looks like the rollers have been knocked off. I'm not really... Yes, the T-72 does have rollers, you can tell further in the back. And we can also see that the front leading wheel has been entirely blown off. The Ukrainians may attempt to reuse this vehicle, although I don't really think it would actually be worth their time and effort to try and bring this back up to fighting spec. So I believe they'll probably just leave this in the field, but it is incredibly good to see that the Ukrainians are still knocking out some of Russia's best and most modern armor during this war. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see another T-72B3 burning. The Russians apparently asked the question again, could a Russian tank stand up to a Western ATGM? And they once again got the answer that it's no, it just can't. And so here we can see this tank actually stopped dead in its tracks and burning. So it's nice to see a smoldering wreck in a field, especially if it's a Russian one. And it's also good to know that this tank will never see the light of day again, and it will never make it back to Moscow for the Victory Day Parade, which is only 3 days away now. Everyone keep that in mind. The Victory Day Parade is only 3 days away. I actually ran a poll at the beginning of the stream asking if y'all were ready for the Victory Day Parade, and it seemed like 75% of y'all said yes, and 20-something% of y'all said no. And hopefully y'all will get ready for the Victory Day Parade, because I think we're going to be in for a shock this year in seeing that there may actually be a lack of vehicles in the parade. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where you can see the Ukrainians were taking a good look at some Russian loot they got today. So let's take a look at what they got. Of course, this is a little bit of an unorthodox unboxing video, but it's still good to see. So we can see there real quick, let's go back and take a look at this in better detail. We can see this guy open the box and then run off. So he was pretty much expecting that there was some kind of booby trap in this little crate and that it may explode on him. And so he did what was the smart thing to do, and he flipped it open and then tried to run away. As we can see, there was no explosive in it. And so then he walked back, and now he's going to take a look at what's inside of this box.
Опа, бронебоечки. Заебись.
Леш, іди забирай свої патрони, блядь. Що, це я?
Ебать.
Сумочка? Прикинь.
Вторая армия в мире, блядь.
Ёбаный.
Надо я, блядь, снимать.
And I'm going to pause this right here because I don't want to interrupt the Ukrainians in the video, because if I do, people who understand Ukrainian can't really hear them. But we can see the ghillie man here having an absolute whale of a time, seeing that one of the Russians stole a purse, and now this soldier has gotten the purse back, and I wonder if they're going to try and return it to its owner. Probably not. There's probably no more identifying things within it, like an ID or something like that, for it to know who it came from. But still, it is funny to see. We see the Ukrainians are having a blast with it.
А де ПКР?
Уже десь забрали. Надо тоже проверить по-любому, сука. Что там?
Мучительная смерть.
Смерть. Ну да, вона така й була в них.
Ебать, ты гурба.
Ну, от так. Россия.
Кто часы проебал, ебать?
So that is the end of that video, but you can see that the Russians were apparently going on a shopping spree in Ukraine, and they were putting it all on the tap because they had a pretty decent amount of stuff inside of that vehicle that you could tell was clearly stolen from Ukrainian citizens, including what may be this watch. And so we can see that the Ukrainians have now gotten it back for their own citizenry, and hopefully, although this is incredibly optimistic, that stuff can be returned to its original owners. Nonetheless, it is a Russian vehicle that has been abandoned, the crew has left, and we can see that the Ukrainians are once again getting a decent amount of supplies and a free vehicle out of the entire ordeal. So I'd say that was pretty worth it. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians taking Russian POWs. We've actually seen a lot of these videos today, and it shows that the Ukrainians have made significant progress on some front somewhere, and that they've overrun the Russians to the point that groups of them are now starting to surrender. So with that, I want y'all also to keep in mind in this video that we can see and hear a wounded Russian soldier, but it's not entirely graphic. So if you are a little bit sensitive to slightly graphic imagery, make sure to click off the video and come back in a few minutes, because if you are a little squeamish, this may get you. So with that, here's the video.
Да похуй, блядь, булиты, блядь.
We can now see them putting the wounded Russian inside of the back of a pickup truck. You can hear him moaning a little bit, most likely from his busted up right leg. We can now see this guy trying to get into the back of the truck, and now they put him back there. They're going to shove him up like a bale of straw.
Хочете съебатися, вальнуть, блядь.
Now they're going to close the tail bed.
Ти ще живий? Ти живий, алло? Ти живий? Давай ще раз спокійно, піднімай голову. Прізвище ім'я по батькові.
Положи.
Ти що, дурак чи що? Я ж не прошу по складах, я не тупий.
Положи, Александр
З
Валерьевич.
якого міста?
Луганская область, город Красный Луч, улица, поселок Княгиновка, улица Комсомольская, дом 117.
Коли призваний був?
24 февраля.
В які війська?
Стрелкова 206, больше я ничего, войсковая часть.
Чого?
Ну, я не знаю.
Як не знаю, що ти свою
Мне нам документы не дают вообще.
фейкову родину не можеш назвати? Як вона називається?
Вообще ехали в Луганск,
Ну.
а потом уже заперли
А
сюда.
як ви її називаєте тепер?
Кого?
Кого? Родину свою, яку ти фейкову?
Для меня она была Украина, для меня она и осталась.
Та?
Украина.
А чого ти приїхав
А то, что
воювати?
меня сюда запихнули ненасильно, забирают всех подряд.
Ага, всіх подряд, да. Зараз приїдуть служби, ти розказуєш все повністю, де бачив, як робив.
Всё, я
Поняв?
так и расскажу.
Командира як
Спасибо,
звати?
Был большой. Ранен увезли в госпиталь.
Як
На
його
растяжке
прізвище?
Большой, я не знаю, как его зовут. Ну, если по-
Ти офіцер?
Нет, рядовой. А вот это, что
8
начали
років нам
войну,
розказували, що ми фашисти, ти тут фашистів бачив?
я не знаю.
В Харкові
кто.
бачиш
Да вон, вот
фашистів?
те фашисты сидят, которые войну.
Now, I'm going to interrupt this here real quick. We are nearing the end of the video, so we're not really missing much. But this guy is incredibly old, and I've been letting this run uninterrupted so that way our Ukrainian speakers can actually listen to what's being said. But this man is old. There's no way this guy's a conscript. And let me know in the chat if y'all are thinking that as well. I think this guy must be some kind of PMC or career soldier, because this guy is so old that that's really the only explanation of how he's still in the military at that age, because the age of conscription in Russia, I believe, is anywhere in between 18 and 35, and this guy looks like he's well in his 40s or 50s. So with that, I'm going to let the video end.
А раньше жили, блядь, все вместе, плечом к плечу, блядь. А теперь они
And so with that, that's the end of the video. But you can see in that video that 2 prisoners have been captured today, and they did interrogate one, and the other one was heavily injured with some kind of injury on his right leg. And so it is good to see that the Ukrainians are still managing to capture POWs, and it's letting us know that the Ukrainians are pushing back the Russian front so quickly in some areas, for example this one, that they're actually overrunning Russians where they are surrendering. So that lets us know that a massive amount of progress has been made somewhere on the front lines today, but we don't know exactly where because this is a location unknown video. But I have a general idea, and we will get to that later on in the video. So with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see 2 Russian tanks and an APC burning somewhere in the middle of a field. So of course this is wonderful to see. It is a large amount of Russian equipment completely destroyed, and I will have to mute it because it's got copyrighted music. As we can see, here's the wreck of a BMP-2. We can see that the engine bay hood was blown off, as well as the turret. We can also see that the T-72 behind it was also blown up, and the turret was lifted out of its basket and then off to the side. And we can see another T-72 perhaps. I'm not exactly sure. It kind of looks like it may be a T-80 burning behind it. So we can see here a couple of pictures, not too graphic, but we can see that the Russians did take significant losses in that one specific area, although we're not sure where that was. And that is, of course, good to know that the Ukrainians have managed to be making considerable ground and inflicting serious losses on the Russian military as of today. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a Georgian soldier hit by artillery on film. This is something really interesting because this guy was incredibly low to the ground, and the actual artillery burst sounded like it was a significant distance away where they may be out of danger. But somehow, this man just pulled the unlucky straw, and the shrapnel apparently smacked him dead in the right side of his leg. So I'm going to let y'all see this video. The guy actually handles it like a champ. I've got to say, anyone who really takes a shrapnel wound and acts like this guy has got to be having balls of steel or something like that. And so with that, let's take a look at this video.
გავიდა ჩვენ. რა კაი ფონზე ხარ? ახლა. ვააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააააaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaa
დაჭრილი ყავს. ფეხი. მარჯვენა ფეხი. უხსქვევით. ისი გამიჭრა. კი, დაჭრილი ყავს. დავარ. წავედ. რანილი. წამო, წავედ. ტელეფონი.
So as we can see here in this video, an artillery blast occurred a distance away from him, and somehow with this guy laying prone on the ground, he was unlucky and the shrapnel hit him in his right leg. I did get a translation on this, and what he said is, he went, and then he's like, oh my god, I got hit in my right leg. And then the guy who got up and is stopping the video here at the end, he got up and took a look at his right leg and said, oh god, yeah, you were hit. And then he's getting up to end the recording and most likely try and help his friend to get to a medic. And you have to say that considering that the Georgians aren't even in this war directly, this doesn't really concern them, and that these Georgians have taken it upon themselves to go to Ukraine and risk taking injuries like this to defend something they believe in says a lot. And so I wish this man the best of luck. I hope that he does have a speedy recovery, and then he gets plenty of good food behind the front lines. I don't know what the food situation is like on the front lines for the Ukrainians, but hopefully he gets treated to some 4-course meals and some good praise by the Ukrainians, considering that this man is a volunteer fighting for the beliefs that they believe in as well. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see that the Ukrainian forces have been taking a joyride today on a T-72B3. It was an incredibly funny video because the guy almost drove the thing off the road. I don't know if it's because he's a bad driver, he was looking at the camera, but still, it was pretty funny to see. And it's great to know that the Ukrainians are actually capturing so many Russian tanks that they're now repurposing them to the point that we're actually seeing a large amount of former Russian tanks being used by the Ukrainians on film. And this is one of those examples. So I'm going to let the video play. And you see they almost went off the road there. Actually, it kind of looked like they did. But we'll give them a little bit of credit and say he didn't go all the way off the road. But still, great thing to see that the Ukrainians are using former Russian tanks. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we've seen the losses for today of May 6th. The casualty losses are incredibly high. First off, we've seen that the Russians are just shy of losing 24,900 troops killed. That's killed alone just today, with an additional 200 being killed at the time of this publishing. We've seen that the Russians have lost 83 anti-aircraft systems, no new ones today. They've lost 3 new artillery vehicles, SPGs specifically, 3 new ones today. They've lost an additional 18 tanks today, 35 armored personnel carriers, another boat. Although I haven't seen the footage of that, I believe that may be adding the Makarov into this, which we'll talk about in a second. We've seen additional 200 troops get killed today, an additional 19 vehicles destroyed. These are like your Tigers and such things like that. 0 new helicopters, 3 new jets today, almost bringing the number up to 200. Hopefully they can surpass 200 before Victory Day. 2 new MLRS systems were destroyed, 12 drones, no new special equipment vehicles were destroyed, and we haven't seen any new high-ranking officers get killed, any more POWs that are high-ranking being taken, and no cruise missiles or ballistic missiles that have been intercepted by air defenses. But as of the rest of the statistics, today has been an incredibly good day, and hopefully they will only get better as Victory Day draws near. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we've seen 2 buddies walking in a field. Now, there is a text-to-speech translation in the bottom left corner of the screen, so I'm going to let this play because this is about one of the funniest friend-to-friend interactions I've seen. So I'm just going to let y'all see it and enjoy it because it was pretty funny how they react to each other. It's kind of like a comedy routine.
Там стреляют, а мы с Юрком пиздуем. Да, Юрко? Нам похуй. Ми набрались повні, блядь, кармани, оружия. Юрко несе таку хуйню, коротше, страшну, блядь. На нього лиш подивися, блядь, і вже страшно. Скажи, Юрко. Він не хоче казати, він скромний хлопець. Але орків пиздує, нахуй.
So we can see that the guy in the back is like, honestly, not to sound immature or anything or compare this to pop culture stuff because I don't like to do that a lot, but this does honestly feel like this is the real life version of SpongeBob and Squidward trying to deliver that pizza, and the guy filming is SpongeBob, you know, Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza, and Squidward is the one up front carrying the pizza. But still, I love the little interaction here. You can tell that these guys are actually good friends. It's just that his friend isn't talking right now because they're being filmed. Maybe he is a little shy. But I don't even know. Well, actually, I do know what this thing is. It's an ATGM mount because it does have the sights on it. It also has the mounting rail for the actual missile and kind of like the tube it's held in. So this is some kind of ATGM launcher. But still, very neat to see. It's neat to see human interactions in between the soldiers themselves, and it does give you a little bit of an idea of who's actually fighting on the front. It's normal people, just like the rest of us out there trying to fight for the greater good of defending their homeland. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a BMP-2 destroyed. It's just a single BMP-2, so it's nothing extravagant or anything, but it is, of course, wonderful to see. And so here's the video of that. As we can see, the turret was completely lifted off of the tank over to the right side, and we can see that this is a Ukrainian tank that's filming it and moving further up the road. It looks like it was maybe a T-64BV, and with that, we're going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a Ukrainian soldier under artillery fire again, and handling it pretty well. So I'm going to let y'all just see this video. It pretty much speaks for itself in a way, but I will give a little bit of commentary here and there.
Ебать, свистануло. Давай, перемещайся ко мне поближе. Хоть деревья есть. Бля, в натуре по блиндажу, походу, попали.
As you can see, he's now just sitting inside the trench. Artillery fire is sporadically hitting around him. It sounds a little distant at the moment. Now we can hear that it's getting a little bit closer to his trench. He's still handling it like a champ. He's staying incredibly calm. This guy's got nerves of steel right here. Now we can hear it getting incredibly close. That was probably only 100 yards away, and we can actually see the plume from that shell right on the left side of the screen a little bit. I'm going to move this over to the side. We can hear a little bit of chit-chat further down the trench to the left side of the screen. And now the fire is getting even closer. Now we can see that the plume from the shell is actually inching up just a little bit closer. And we can tell that these Ukrainians are about to be in for it, because these may be ranging shots, trying to make sure that the artillery fire will be accurate once the actual salvos begin. It sounded like that one passed over the camera and landed behind the trench. And now we can hear that silence has come over the field. And we can actually hear the next shell whistling in at the end of the video, but unfortunately it cuts off there. Once again, I would like to note that that man had balls of steel. That's one thing you could tell for certain. That guy did not flinch hardly at all, and his voice stayed entirely calm throughout. So a huge load of credit to that guy for having the nerves to be up there and actually be brave on camera for the world to see. And that does give you an idea of, while these are normal, ordinary people like we saw walking through that field just a second ago, and I'm sorry if I never mentioned names, I'm never really good with names, but this guy here shows you how normal people can become extraordinarily brave even in the face of death, like we see here. And so I've got to say, that was a brave guy. And with that, we're now going to move on to our last bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a Georgian Stugna attack. Looks like the Georgians didn't rest easy on that guy taking an injury in the leg, and it looks like they're now trying to take it out against the, take it out against the Russians here with this Stugna attack. So I'm going to let y'all see the footage. We have not seen a Stugna attack in a while, and honestly, I've been itching for one as well. I've seen a lot of people talking about it in the chat, and I have to agree that Stugna attacks are good to see. And so here's another one.
Отойдите!
We can now see the Stugna was fired, and it is traveling. We can now see them guiding it down onto the tank, which is right on the crosshair right now. The missile is still traveling. And it was a direct hit. Most likely destroyed the tank. And we can now hear the crew celebrating, which is great to hear. Looks like the Russians once again tried the old, will the ATGM still knock out the tanks question, and it looks like they still got the same answer, which is, yeah, they'll knock them out. And so with that, that is the end of the Location Unknown news, which we've actually had a huge amount of today. It was 17 bits of news. That's the largest amount we've had in a while. And so with that, we're now about to move on to the Sumy area. Sorry for a bit of my rough English right now. I don't know why that is the case, but for some reason it just is. But before we move on to the Sumy news and also the Russian and Kharkiv news, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat and then return to the news. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt once again. First up, we have a $72 donation from Anthony Dobson. Thank you very much, Anthony. That's very generous of you. And Enforcer would probably like to weigh in.
Say what?
Would you like to weigh in, Enforcer?
Oh, I thought that was his question. I was like, weighing on what? But yes, I thank you so much, Anthony. You've been around for an incredibly long while. I mean, like, golly, if I had to remember, as long as my memory can recollect, which is not a long time. I kind of like have short-term memory in a way, but you've been around pretty much the entire time, and I've remembered answering your questions for a long while. And I thank you so much for being around and enjoying these streams so much, and also supporting this channel, which helps us to keep on running, so that way everyone can keep on enjoying it. So I thank you so much once again. It helps us out a load, and with that, I thank you so much, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from Oi Lam. And thank you very much for your donation to the channel. And it's very much appreciated. And Enforcer, would you like to add anything on that one?
Yes, why do y'all send in these super chats without questions? It pains me that y'all don't get anything out of it rather than supporting the channel, but I do thank y'all so much for your support. Please, I mean, like, I would rather y'all go get merch or something, so that way you at least got something out of it. But I do thank you so much for enjoying the channel, where you just like it enough that watching the stream is what y'all are getting out of it, I guess. I've heard that explanation a lot, but it just doesn't equate in my head. I'm like, well, you know, I'd like to answer y'all's questions, but still, I thank you so much for the support. It does mean a lot, and it helps us to continue running this channel. And with that, we're going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to move back into the news around the Sumy, Russia, and Kharkiv area. So with that, on to the last question of this segment.
And the last one of this segment goes to Paolo Curidini, who puts in a $30 donation and says, thumbs up.
Well, thank you very much, and make sure, everyone, if you do enjoy the streams, to hit the like button. It helps us out a lot. Y'all don't know how much hitting the like button actually helps us out, and so if you would like to support the channel, and you don't really feel like sending in a super chat, or you just, you know, just want to help out any way you can, make sure to smack that like button, because that helps us out a whole load, and I'm always super appreciative of all of the Lee Spring Army soldiers that do their duty and smack that like button, the Lee Spring button. And so with that, we've reached the end of this question segment. We'll once again go back to another one and answer everyone's super chats for the night, but with that, we're now going to move up towards the Sumy area, where we've seen a wild dash cam video come out today that was not uploaded anywhere on the internet until today, and so we have to go all the way back to the 24th of February in this video. And I have to show you the craziest video. What you are seeing here is a Russian column passing by this car. All of these vehicles are Russian. And you can see back then they actually liberally marked them with Zs. Now they're covered in Zs, most likely due to fratricide or friendly fire incidents. So we can see all those BTRs pass. And now this guy is still driving down the road like normal. And now this guy is coming up on a break in the road where there's kind of like a pit stop pullover area, I guess you could call it. And then this is where insanity unfolds. These are not Russian units. Well, actually, correction. These are Russian units on the left side of the road. This is a Ukrainian supply truck. And this is how confusing the war was at the start for both sides, is that this supply truck was passing by a Russian artillery unit here on the left side of the screen, and neither side knew it, and a Russian BTR is now rolling down the street past this Ukrainian supply truck. And everyone's so confused, they don't even know what's going on. But this BTR is literally about to pull a drive-by on this supply truck. So I'm not going to interrupt it. I'm just going to let the whole entire thing play out and then maybe give a little bit of an analysis afterwards. But here's the drive-by shooting that the Russians did on the supply truck. Now we can see the driver turning around, and now he's going the other way. Now that is insane, and that really gives you an idea of how confusing everything was at the beginning of this war, and why it was so hard for everyone to even say where the front lines were, because Ukrainian and Russian units were passing each other on a regular basis. And I remember showing a whole load of footage like that throughout the first week of the war, where Russian and Ukrainian units would just pass each other on the road, and they would just be like, hey, look, there's the enemy, and they just drive on by, because there was really nothing they could do. Everything was so confusing at that point that literally there was nothing either side could do. And we could see there that for one instance, there was something that happened. The BTR fired straight into the Ukrainian supply truck. And that's insane when you really think about it, that the missiles fell on Ukraine that night on the 24th of February. I started reporting on the stream, and then the next day, in the dawn of the next morning, Russian forces were passing by Ukrainian forces on the road. Both sides were really oblivious as to each other's whereabouts or what was going on, and there would just be these brief little skirmishes where a BTR would just drive by, shoot up a supply truck, And that's really insane when you think about that context of a war, is that this isn't like a movie where there's some kind of build up and it's like an official star of the war and the like camera lens changes filters to like a more yellowish tint or something like that. It was literally just the next day, everyone was going about their lives. Some people may have not even known that the war had started, like this guy. And then you're just driving down the street and you see an armored personnel carrier shoot up a supply truck right in front of you. And that kind of gives you an idea of how sudden this really was for everyone. And it was really insane to watch. And considering that this is a flashback to the first day of the war, actually, I shouldn't have put this on stream, but still, it was uploaded today and wasn't seen anywhere before today. This is the first time it's made its rounds on the internet. And it was such an insane clip. And it shows you how frantic the actual first days of the war was, that I had to put it on here because it's insane to see now looking back at it. So with that, we're now going to move deep within Russia. The Russians have been taking massive amounts of casualties, and no one can lie about that anymore, not even the Russians. The Ukrainians claim that around 25,000 soldiers have been killed directly. The Russians, of course, try and mitigate that number and downplay it, much like they've been mitigating all of the failures during this war. But we can see here in this village just 200 kilometers south of Moscow that the dead are piling up there as well. And this isn't the only place within Russia where the dead are starting to make a large impact on the usable land area around these villages. Here we can see a large amount of graves covered with flowers and Russian flags, commemorating all of the dead that the Russians are trying to paint as glorious people. And this is not the only village that has something like this inside of it. There are hundreds of villages, if not every single village within Russia, with graves like this, with flowers adorned all over them, commemorating the war dead. And this gives you an idea that the Ukrainians aren't really lying about the losses that the Russians have taken. It's mostly true. You can see even over on the other side of the street, there are more dead over there with flags adorning each one of their graves. And so it looks like the sunflowers won't be growing on Ukrainian soil, they'll be growing on Russian soil, but those sunflowers will serve as a reminder that people ought to not mess with Ukraine lest you be beat to death. So with that, we're now going to move out of Russia, now that we've seen that, and we're now going to move down towards the Kharkiv area. Starting off in the Belgorod region, we've seen a Russian aircraft operating over Belgorod city and apparently firing some kind of air-to-air or air-to-surface missiles while flying over. So let's take a look at this. We can see the contrail up there in the sky as the aircraft is moving incredibly fast. Most likely close to Mach or maybe a little bit over. But then again, that's just speculation and an assumption. The contrail is moving really quickly and that's really all we can tell.
Ну, блин, вообще четко. Я даже увеличил, глянь, Леха, вообще. Вон он идет пока.
We can see that the aircraft is still pressing forward.
Все разгоняется. Сейчас должна пойти что-то пойти от него. Сейчас будет ебашить.
We can now see it firing a missile.
Сейчас хлопов будет. Все, сейчас он должен на разворот. Да.
And we can now see the aircraft veering off.
Да, хлопок сейчас будет. Надо было посчитать, сколько до этого и узнать километраж.
А вон ракета пошла.
Вон, ага.
It appears that there's another aircraft coming back from Ukrainian airspace over there on the other side of the film, or that may be the trail of the missile that was fired from that aircraft. I can't really tell for certain.
Позвонят, сейчас скажут. Через час увидим. Николаевка горит там какая-нибудь. Глянь, вот он. Ой, пропал где-то. Не вижу. Да я не вижу его. Это слышишь, походу 57-е новые. Они, по форме его видно, что это треугольник.
And now we can actually see what may be a clear indication that this Russian aircraft has gone supersonic, because it looks like it had the little vapor wave around it once you are going supersonic. I'm not entirely sure. That is an assumption. And so with that, we've seen this aircraft over Belgorod firing some kind of missile towards Ukraine. That's really all we can get from this. We're now going to move into Kharkiv itself, where we've gotten a little bit more interesting news. So everyone who's watching, if you are here for some huge news, this is going to be the news of the night right here, along with the news that happened in the Black Sea. Starting off, building up to what's happened over here on the other side of the city, we've seen that there has been a large amount of abandoned Russian equipment in a field right outside of Kharkiv. Well, not really right outside of Kharkiv. It's actually a couple of miles away. But you can see here that there was an MTLB, it seems, a T-72B3 or a T-72B, a TOS system, and another vehicle down there I cannot identify.
Один танк нормальний. Ще один нормальний, але башня отут у нього.
We can now hear the artillery coming in on them, as it seems like the Russians are going to attempt to destroy their own vehicles, maybe with artillery fire.
Це відео буде добре. Стаєм? Стаєм.
І ще один нормальний танк. Так, все, тікаємо звідси, тікаємо.
And we can see another T-72B right behind them, marked up with Z's, and we can see it's clearly abandoned in this field. It may be because this field was tilled, which may have made it more susceptible to the Rasputitsa and causing the tanks to bog down and get stuck, or the Russians may have abandoned them due to fierce counterattacks and the fact that that column most likely wouldn't have been able to make it out if they were alive. So, now that we've covered that news, which is of course incredibly good news to hear, and it looks like the Ukrainians may have gotten a few nice vehicles out of this sweet little deal. Once again, the Russians aren't really asking for a lot out of these deals. They're really just asking that the Ukrainians beat them, and then in return, they get free vehicles. Pretty fair deal. Honestly, it's a win-win for the Ukrainians and a lose-lose for the Russians. So with that, we're now going to move to the news that is major. The Ukrainians broke the Russian lines on the eastern side of Kharkiv several days ago, and the lines literally disintegrated, with the Ukrainians able to cover 10 miles a day for 2 days straight and reach and recapture the city of Stary Saltiv. Now that they've recaptured the city of Stary Saltiv, it seems like they're focusing their efforts entirely northwards to then push the Russians all the way back to the Russian border, everywhere west of the Donets River. And we could see today that there was news, official news from the Ministry of Defense, claiming that the villages of Peremolha and Ukrainka were retaken by Ukrainian forces, as well as Ruski Tishki, which was also retaken largely by Ukrainian forces, but still being somewhat contested. So that is, of course, incredibly good news, and it's letting us know that the Russian lines in that area are incredibly weak and may be on the verge of total collapse, considering that the Ukrainians are now pushing them around without any real regard for caution, and they're really just moving through what seems to be unopposed territory. I'm not really sure if this is because the Russians have entirely collapsed in that region, or it's some kind of orderly withdrawal to create a new defensive line that they may be able to hold better, but they are losing land at an untold degree. And it is, of course, incredible to see. Not only do we have the report from the Ministry of Defense today to show that this has been the case, but we have videos from the ground to show that the Ukrainians have been managing to take massive amounts of land and also capture a sizable amount of prisoners. Starting off, we can see that more Russian vehicles were destroyed in the process of this counterattack today, with them burning in the background of this video. So I'm going to let y'all see this.
Так буде з кожним, сука, підарасом, блядь. Ха, сука, черти ебаные, блядь. Петушки, блядь.
Якщо нема, откинули і йобнули в нього, щоб він не
Вторая армия мира, блядь.
So this guy, I've never seen excitement in anyone like this in a Ukrainian video. Let's take a look at this guy's face right here.
Петушки, блядь.
Now this is a face of pure joy and excitement right here. This guy is proud of what he's doing for his country, and I have to agree that this is something incredible. They're managing to push the Russians back, and this is something you cannot refute anymore because the evidence is irrefutable. It's hardcore. And we can see here that the Russians have lost several more armored personnel carriers, maybe a T-72 over here in the center, a BMP perhaps over here on the left, and then certainly a BMP-2 here on the right side of the screen that looks largely intact, actually. So it's, of course, wonderful to see, and it is good to know that we are actually getting video evidence from the ground showing that these counterattacks are actually inflicting massive damage on the Russian troops and are actually pushing them back. And with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from this area, where we've seen that the Ukrainians have taken Russian prisoners near this village area. So with that, here's this video. Actually, pictures. I'm sorry, correction. We can see that the Russians apparently were trying to go all out in their occupation of Ukraine, trying to steal as much jewelry as possible and anything they could find of value. In this next picture, we can actually see some medals that one of the crew members may have had hung inside of the vehicle, and it looks like they really weren't deserving of those medals because they've now been captured by the Ukrainians. Here in this next picture, we can see a couple of hand grenades just sitting around on the floor. And one thing I would like to note, and I don't know if this is the same for all vehicles in every single country, but the Russians live like slobs inside of their APCs. I mean, like, it is awful in there. Look at all the garbage on the floor. The bottom of this thing never looks like it's been cleaned out. I mean, like, hell, they even have a car battery right here. Yeah, it's silly. It's crazy, honestly. But we can just see that they littered a couple of grenades there on the bottom of the floor. And with that, in the last picture, we can see a truck filled with Russian prisoners tied up with the green tape that the Ukrainians are now using to identify their soldiers. An incredibly good thing to see, and it is letting us know that the Ukrainians are apparently overrunning Russian positions at such a speed at this point that they're actually pretty much encircling them to the point that the only option the Russian soldiers have is to surrender or be killed. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from this area, where we can see more destroyed Russian vehicles. This is a video that was showed in the Enforcer summary today, and this does show an incredibly large amount of vehicles in one area smoldering and burning. First off, we can see a vehicle over there burning. We can't really tell what kind. Right there, that appears to be a T-72 without a turret that's burning over there on that side of the screen. And then right here, this appears to be a T-80 of a sort, although I can't tell exactly what kind. It looks like it may actually be a T-80B, a T-80BV maybe. And then we can also see what may be another T-64 or a T-80, although I can't really tell for certain. We can also hear the man here in this video saying that this was a 3.5-hour-long firefight, and in the process of it, the Ukrainians managed to destroy all of these vehicles, all of these armored vehicles in this small area of the field. And so that's giving you an idea of the actual power behind the Ukrainian counterattack and how competently they're being conducted, considering that the Russians hardly are ever able to manage to retake any kind of ground or take it in the first place, and then the Ukrainians can launch a counterattack, wipe out what appears to be a third of a BTG's actual fighting force in terms of its armor, and then continue to push the Russians miles back to make sure that that's properly said. And with that, we're now going to move on to the last bit of news from this area, where we can see that trash was left behind in the Russian retreat. And one of the best examples to show that Russian soldiers were involved in a large amount of activity, or any military for that matter, is the amount of trash they leave behind. And this is actually something that is historically true. In the Napoleonic era, it was incredibly common for scouts in an army, like cavalry scouts, to find other armies and see which direction they're heading in based off of the amount of debris and trash they leave behind. As an army would march, they would drop things like pots, pans, and everything in between as they were on their march. And so we can see this pretty much here with all the amounts of clothes, food, wrappers, and such things like that the Russians left behind, which lets us know that they were once here and they now have retreated. So there is hardcore evidence in the form of this trash that the Russians were in this area and actually did retreat. This isn't a made-up video.
Десант, пацаны. Пидоры, блядь. Пидоры, блядь, мародеры. Тачки, блядь, всякая хуйня. Лестницы, блядь. Кого нахуй отдай? Отдай ружье. Да. Прогулочка, конечно. Да, блядь, пизда нахуй прогулочка.
So we can see here loads of garbage, and we can also see an MTLB.
Спальники, рюкзаки, блядь, вещи.
We can also see a very nice RPG-7. I have to note It's got an exquisite finish on it. I mean, like, looks like it's brand new, really. Let me know in the comments if y'all agree with that, because that's probably the best condition RPG 7 I've ever seen during the entirety of this war.
Ты понял, даже десантура это ж, блядь. Андоны, блядь, побросали все, потекали нахуй. Вот вам и Харьковская область. Пидорасы, блядь. Шайтан труба, блядь, и та загорела. Пидоры, блядь.
With that, that's the end of the video. It is, of course, wonderful to see that we do have hardcore evidence to show that the Ukrainians have had massive progress today in this direction, and they may be, sooner than later, actually pushing the Russians out of everything on this side of the Donetsk River. And so that is something that you don't hear often, and I don't think it's going to happen incredibly fast. It probably will take a week or two for that to actually unfold. The Russians may actually conduct a withdrawal very soon, considering that this front is going so poorly and they're slowly being pushed back like they were in the Kyiv area, which is showing a breakdown of logistics, a breakdown of morale, a breakdown of their front lines. It's showing a breakdown of everything that's critical to keeping a war going. And so the Russians may actually conduct some kind of I guess you could call it orderly withdrawal from this area of the front and focus entirely on the southeast, east of the Donetsk River. With that, we're now going to move further down the line. Of course, I have to make a note of Izium. There is heavy fighting going on here, but we don't really get a lot of news from this area in particular. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because the fighting has actually slowed down over the past few days. I can't really tell you for certain, but we do know that largely there has been no video evidence coming out here for the past few days. We're now going to move even further down the front line, and we're now going to touch on the area of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, which I would say has become the new Kharkiv, or the new Kyiv in a way. And we haven't actually heard any news out of there to a large degree, and I think that the fighting has generally died down in this area, maybe because the Ukrainians have become so well defended that the Russians no longer see it as a viable solution to even try and encircle the city, due to the amount of losses they're taking just trying to capture easier stuff. And so we're now going to move downwards towards the front lines near Popasna and Herske, where we've actually gotten a little bit of news today here on the Donbass region. So with that, we can actually see a Russian vehicle firing a Kornet ATGM in this video. We're not particularly sure where it's heading, but we do know that it did fire Kornets. We can now hear the Kornets firing and see it. We can also see a vehicle back there in the back of the film firing in Kornets as well, although we're not really sure where. With that, we're now going to move on down further to the Popasna region, where we've gotten confirmed news of actual fighting still occurring in Popasna, which is showing that there is a pitched battle occurring in between the Wagner group and the Ukrainian defenders. Of course, I don't ever identify the defenders, although I did manage to find a map that someone's published, hopefully it will be taken down soon, that does identify where every single Ukrainian unit is on the front lines. Hopefully that can be removed, but with that, we can see the Wagner group operating here in Popasna. So here's this video. We can see them firing an artillery piece, and now it looks like they're going to start firing a grenade launcher as well. Wait a minute, did you notice that guy? Why in the world did he like let go of it like it was a hot pan? Let's watch that again. Look at that. What in the world was that? Also, I saw Reyes say, I think it's pronounced Wagner. I mean, you know, I think everyone's getting the picture a little bit, but I'll try and say Wagner if I can. I try and pronounce everything as correct as possible. But still, you can see that the Wagner group was conducting operations in the Popasna region, and here in this next bit of film, we can actually see the Russians using an AT gun in Popasna. And so with that, here's this video. Apparently it's an MT-12 anti-tank gun, so I'm going to let y'all see this real quick. Wait a minute. let me check something real quick. Apparently, this is the extended video of the last one. So it actually just showed the gun actually being coordinated by some kind of spotter group. So we're actually going to skip past this one, and we're now going to move on down towards the Mariupol area. But before we do, we've actually covered all the news from Russia, Kharkiv, Sumy, and the Donbass region. So we're now going to move into our next question segment, where we'll answer 3 questions from the live chat, and then we'll return back to the news to cover what's occurred, to cover what's happened in the Southern Front, Russia that we have not covered, and the international news, and then we will return back to the question segment. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so first up, we have a $50 donation from William Allen, who says, okay, get something out of this. Ags win 2 years in a row. BTHO, Bama.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and yes, thank you very much for putting something in there, because at least it gives me something to respond to. I don't really watch a lot of football. Of course, you know, I'm a very busy person. I spend a lot of my time, you know, trying to look up things, research things, and do, you know, the stream. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to see anything about it, but I know that the football kind of like competition down here in Alabama, in between Auburn and Alabama, is incredibly high, and just mentioning those names will start a bloodfest in the chat, but I'm okay with that. It's just sports. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, William Allen. I hope that does address the comment in a way, and I thank you so much for adding something onto it, because it does make me feel like I am giving you a little bit of something out of your support. So thank you once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from Sylvester the Cat, who says, Monday is your day off. What are you going to do for V-Day? Slava Ukraine.
Actually, I forgot to tell everyone at the start of this stream, Monday, and make sure to stay around, y'all, because this is important news. Monday is not going to be a day off for me. I'm going to go straight, probably like 13 days doing streams here, because May 9th is a huge day. We're probably going to stream the Victory Day Parade, and we're also going to run a stream on top of that, most likely. Although, if I stream the Victory Day Parade, it's going to be without commentary. It's just going to be the Victory Day Parade. So, we will be running Monday. Everyone keep that in mind. Monday will be a streaming night. So make sure to hop on, because May 9th may be a huge day with huge events occurring, although we're not really sure yet, and I'm kind of skeptical about it. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that cues everyone in that there will probably, there actually will definitely be a stream on Monday. So I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does cue in everyone on something I definitely forgot to mention at the beginning of this stream. So with that, we're now going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then start off on our Southern news and the rest of the news around the world.
And the last one of this segment goes to Anthony Dobson again. He puts in a $36 donation and says, did you hear that as a part of the latest sanctions on Russia, the U.S. will exile Amber Heard to Moscow?
Oh no! Well, hopefully she craps on Putin's bed, because it seems like she has a pretty decent habit of doing that. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the comment in a way. I did like the joke. It was a pretty good one. But I'm not really, once again, like into celebrity stuff a lot. Like, I've seen that going on, and I have been thinking about covering it, but I have no knowledge at all to actually cover that, because I don't really know a lot about Johnny Depp, rather than he was in Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a great movie series. And then I know absolutely nothing about Amber Heard. I didn't know who she was until this trial actually started. So I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we've reached the end of this question segment, and we're now going to cover the news from the Southern Front, and the rest of the world, and also down here near Georgia, because there's been an interesting occurrence that happened there. Starting off, we're now going to move to the area of Mariupol, where we've actually gotten a decent amount of news today, showing that there is a large increase in the action and the fighting at the plant, even compared to yesterday. Starting off, we can see a grad firing directly into the Azovstal in this picture. Of course, this gives you an idea of how tough the fighting has gotten for both sides, considering that the Russians are now using a grad in nearly a direct fire situation straight onto the plant. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from inside the plant, where we can see the Russians attacking the Azovstal directly here in this clip. This is from the floors of a destroyed building overlooking the Azovstal plant, and we can see them using rifles to hit the plant.
Огонь!
And with that, that is the end of this video. As you can see, a large amount of recoilless rifles and RPGs were being used, firing directly at the Azovstal. And once again, have to note for everyone here that there are still a few hundred civilians left inside the Azovstal with no way out as of the moment. Although there has been reports that on, I believe, tomorrow, there will be a ceasefire and some kind of corridor set up for the remaining citizens stuck inside the Azovstal to make their way out. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from inside the Azovstal, where we can see that the battle continues to rage on in this video, taken from afar towards the plant. So here's the video of that. I'm going to start at the very beginning. And so, it's giving you kind of a good idea of how bad things are going for the Ukrainians inside of the Azovstal. The Russians have breached the defensive perimeter around the plant. They're now inside of it. They've used underground tunnels to get in there, and so there's now pockets of Azov defenders and Russians in the plant, and so absolute chaos is breaking out right now. No one really knows how it's going to go. No one knows if the Azov can actually push them out, although I do have a lot of hope for the Ukrainian defenders, and of course I am pro-Ukrainian, so I would like to say that they could push the Russians back out and it would be fine. But when a situation like this historically occurs, for example, when the Mexicans breached the wall of the Alamo, that was really the end of that fort and its defensive position. It was over at that point. So I believe this will be the same for the Azovstal, and I hate to say that, but I believe that will be the case. And I hope that these men go down in the history of Ukraine as someone on the level of the patriots of the United States of America, like the I believe, wait a minute, I'm not going to give an exact number there. I'm not really sure off the top of my head, but the men who got killed in the Boston Massacre, and also all of the brave patriots who died to found the United States of America. Hopefully they will go down in the history books like that for Ukraine, because this is not, the birth of Ukraine wasn't in 1991. The birth of Ukraine is right here. They've never really had a national identity that's been incredibly strong since their formation in 1991 until this time right now here in 2022. Now they're actually starting to form a national identity, and a lot of these stories of these brave men who are defending this nation will go down in the books and create the Ukrainian image and identity, as we'll see from here on. With that, we're now going to move on to the last few bits of news from the Azovstal, where we've seen a video of the boys of the Azovstal, where we can actually see some of the defenders' faces. And they seem pretty calm, collected, and their spirits actually seem high, although the situation is somewhat serious. And so, here's the video.
Так, подписчики, головне помніть, щоб не було у вас, любіть маму, їжте кашу і любіть Україну.
Любіть Україну. І чого? Того, що ось. Тому що по указу.
So with that, that's the end of the video. You can see that that guy is actually pretty young. He looks like a boy. And so hopefully everyone makes it out. Really, I always wish that all the Ukrainians make it out fine and alive, but a war is a war, and this situation is the toughest one ever seen yet by the Ukrainians. And so hopefully they can make it through, although I'm highly skeptical that they will. And while I am pro-Ukrainian, and a lot of people call me biased anyways and say I'm a propaganda channel, which I don't understand, I do look at situations unbiasedly. And while I am pro-Ukrainian, I do have to say I don't really see a lot of hope for the defense of the Azovstal anymore. So hopefully they prove me wrong. I pray that they prove me wrong and I'm wrong for the first time ever. But right now it's not looking too good for them. And with that, we're now going to move on to the last bit of news from the Azovstal, where we see that shelling took out the lights inside of a bunker, and it also looked like the noise of the shelling was so loud that most of the soldiers had to cover their ears, most likely because they were ringing. So here's the video.
Ты уверен, что стоит?
So that's the end of that video. And there wasn't really much to talk about there. You could just see that the artillery explosion was incredibly loud and knocked out the light down there. And so with that, that's the end of the news on the Mariupol area. How much longer can they hold? I'm not really sure. I mean, like, you know, the situation is looking bad right now, but the Ukrainians, especially the Azov, seem to be able to pull off miracles, considering that they've held in a besieged city for 70 days in a modern war. That's nearly unheard of. So if they're able to pull miracles for that long, maybe they can pull another one and manage to push the Russians back out of the defensive perimeter and hold the Azovstal until the end of this war. And I hope that is the case, Although, once again, I do have to say I'm highly skeptical that that will be. So with that, we're now going to move out of the Mariupol area. Once again, I hope that everyone gives some thoughts and prayers to the defenders of the Azovstal and hope that they get out there safe and all right. And with that, we're now going to move on towards the area of Zaporizhia, where today we've seen a switchblade in use. We've actually seen a video of one hitting near a Russian unit. So I'm going to let this video play. I believe that it does have copyrighted music in it. Let me make sure. No, it does not. It's still silent anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we can see the Russians standing around this trench, chit-chatting, and probably robbing Ukrainian civilians of their stuff. And then here in a second, we're going to see the switchblade come in and blow up right near the trench. And so here it comes, right there, and it blew up very close to them. You could actually see a little frame of it actually flying in, and now you can see the Russians freaking out. Unlike the Ukrainians, these guys actually freak out, and now they're running for their lives in any direction away from that. And so with that, that's the end of the video. And I want y'all to notice that. That is something that you can visibly notice. When the Ukrainians get shelled, they'll sprint a little bit to get out of the way of the fire, but then they'll start walking, and then they'll start looking like they're coming up with a plan, and they're scheming, and they're thinking about what they're about to do. The Russians, on the other hand, they hear an explosion, and you literally just see them run, and they never stop running. They just keep on going. And so that gives you an idea of how demoralized the Russians are and how scared they are compared to the Ukrainians, which actually do look calm and collected in most of the videos, if not all of them. And so with that, we're now going to move into the Black Sea, which is the news that everyone's probably been waiting for. So once again, not to give this disclaimer twice in the video, but if you were looking for big news and you were wanting to be here on a historical day, today is that day, and the news here in the Black Sea is that news. The Moskva was sunk some 2 weeks ago. It was a ship that cost $750 million to build and had a crew of around 550 to 600 men on board. Most of those did not survive the explosions and the subsequent sinking of the ship. Here we can see that while that was the best ship in the Russian fleet and the only one of its class, apparently that doesn't mean anything to the Ukrainians or the Russian Navy, because the Russian Navy still continues to lose their next best ships right after the Moskva was sunk prior by anti-ship missiles. We can now see that the Admiral Makarov, which is one of 3 of the most advanced ships in the Russian Black Sea Fleet and one of the most advanced ships in the surface fleet for the Russian Navy in general. We can see here in this video that it was hit by some kind of anti-ship missile, and it is on fire somewhere in the Black Sea. Of course, the Russians have not confirmed this at the moment, but we are getting a generally good idea from the last time this happened that this is not the case, and they're probably going to come out and say that a small fire occurred on the Makarov, and that it was old and decrepit, and they were trying to get rid of it just to make the war that much easier for them. Although the problem with that is that the Admiral Makarov was commissioned and launched into service in 2017, so it's incredibly new for naval standards. But there you can see it burning in the Black Sea. Once again, incredibly good news, and I am happy to see that it will be joining the special underwater operations that the Russians have been conducting in an increasingly larger amount for the previous while. If it doesn't join the special underwater operation, then it will be contributed to an underwater reef. Either way, I am happy to see that the Ukrainians are helping the Russians decide the best tactics to use in this war. And on a serious note, it's kind of crazy to see that the Russian Navy is losing ships in the land war. That's kind of weird and a little bit contradictory to what's actually going on. And so, we're now going to move past the Admiral Makarov. We don't really have a lot of news on it right now, although that's the first time we've heard of it. We will keep apprised of that situation and give updates about it on tomorrow's stream if we can, and the next day afterwards, to see what actually happened in the Russian response to the ship being hit. And so we're now going to move to Snake Island, where we can actually see footage from a Bayraktar flying near the island of another Bayraktar. Sorry, that's really tongue-twisting me there, but striking the island. So I'm going to let y'all see this footage real quick. So we can see here the Snake Island, where the brave defenders of the island, the 13 men, made their stand, and half of them died and half of them were captured. And we can now see that it's occupied by the Russians, but the Ukrainians aren't going to let them have it without a fight, and they're now hitting anti-aircraft systems that have been placed on Snake Island. So with that, that's the end of the video, and it's of course an incredibly good video to see. I hope you all can agree that the Snake Island apparently has a curse on it, because all the ships that have been associated with it so far have come under attack by the Ukrainians. Some of them have been sunk, like the Moskva, and we can also see that the inhabitants of the island now, the orcs in a way, are now getting hit as well. So I don't think it's going good for the Russians in any direction with Snake Island. With that, we're now going to move on to cover the news in the Czech Republic, as we can see Dana SPGs in transit making their way towards Ukraine. Of course, these SPGs have been promised for some time, and we're finally seeing evidence of them actually on the move to Ukraine. I have to mute the video because it does have copyrighted music in it, sadly. But we can see here a Czech train moving its way through the country with the Dana SPGs on flat cars. Of course, these will be put to incredibly good use by the Ukrainian military. These kind of wheeled SPGs are some of the most effective in modern warfare, considering they're highly maneuverable, and they're also incredibly quick to set up and stow for quick shoot and scoot operations. So with that, great to see, and we're now going to move on to some of our last bits of news for the night. But hang around, everyone, because we'll actually be rounding out tonight's stream, like every other stream after now, with an address from the President of Ukraine. Now moving towards the town of, let me make sure I get this pronunciation correct, Vladikavkaz. Here in the town of Vladikavkaz, we've seen an interesting occurrence today. This cannot be accredited to a Ukrainian ballistic missile strike. I believe this could be accredited to Russian saboteurs. We can see today that the hangars at the airfield at this city have caught on fire and are burning uncontrolled. Also, let me mute that. I just realized that was Disney copyrighted music. Disney will come down here and the rat will actually rip my head off. So let me make sure not to do that. But you can see that these hangars are burning ferociously behind this residential area. With that, we actually have one more clip of this fire occurring in Vladikavkaz, where we can see the hangars on fire from another direction. And this is an inferno. I don't know what's on fire over there. Probably an aircraft, maybe some kind of fuel or munitions. But the smoke is incredibly thick, and it's giving us a pretty good indication that this isn't any kind of light supplies that are being destroyed. This is some kind of heavy supplies that are most likely burning over there. And so with that, we're now going to round out the day's news with an address from the man, the myth, the legend, the historical figure of our time, President Zelensky. So I'm going to let y'all listen to his address, and then right afterwards, that will be the end of the news segment for today, and then we'll move on into the question segment and answer everyone's questions who've sent in a live chat, and also answer some questions from the live chat as well. So if you have asked a question addressed to me or Enforcer Matt in the stream, don't worry, you may actually be one of the people who gets their question answered. And so with that, here's the address from President Zelensky.
І українки, наші захисники, і наші захисниці. Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні був насичений день, який почався і завершився нагородженнями наших героїв, наших захисників, наших захисниць. З нагоди Дня піхоти, професійного свята воїнів України, які є фундаментом армії. Зранку зустрівся з нашими військовими, подякував за службу, вручив нагороди, в тому числі нашу нову бойову відзнаку. Ви знаєте, що в нашій країні за часи незалежності не був саме бойових відзнак. І ось сьогодні мав честь вручити нарешті саме таку відзнаку – хрест бойових заслуг. І першим, кому я вирішив вручити цей хрест, став генерал Валерій Залужний, головнокомандуючий Збройних сил України. За відвагу, за мудрість, за організацію ефективної відсічі російському вторгненню. Впевнений, таку відсіч російська армія не забуде довго. Також відзнаку хрест бойових заслуг отримали заступник головнокомандуючого Збройних сил України, генерал-лейтенант Євген Мойсюк, бойовий медик 72-ї окремої механізованої бригади сержант Дар'я Мазуренко, командир 14-ї окремої механізованої бригади полковник Олександр Охріменко, заступник командира механізованого батальйону 72-ї окремої механізованої бригади капітан Владислав Калієвський. Саме бойові нагороди – це справедливість.
Real quick, I'm actually going to interrupt his speech because I'd like to run a poll about this, but would y'all like me to just read off the captions? Would y'all like me to mute Zelensky and read the captions instead. And we're going to run that poll for a second. I'm going to let this continue, of course, the speech, but we're going to get some answers here over the next few minutes. And if a lot of y'all would like me to read the captions and just mute Zelensky and read what he's saying instead, I will do that, or I'll let this video play. Either way, I'm going to let the speech continue while that poll runs.
Справедлива нова традиція для держави, яка на полі бою захищає незалежність нашої держави. Також заснована і спеціальна відзнака за мужність та відвагу для бойових підрозділів, які проявили надзвичайну хоробрість і результативність у боях за Україну. Її отримали 7 бригад, вручив і ордени. Також золота зірка нашим захисникам, які отримали звання Герой України, а також рідним тих наших героїв, яким це звання присвоєно посмертно. Продовжуємо евакуаційну місію з Маріуполя, саме з Азовсталі, за посередництва ООН і Міжнародного комітету Червоного Хреста. Протягом дня наша команда організувала порятунок для більш ніж 40 цивільних людей, жінок і дітей. Сподіваємося, що незабаром вони зможуть прибути вже на безпечну територію після 2 місяців під обстрілами, просто під землею в укриттях. Працюємо також над дипломатичними варіантами для порятунку наших військових, які залишаються ще на Азовсталі. Залучені впливові посередники, впливові держави. Російські війська продовжили обстріли нашої території, зокрема ракетні і авіаційні удари. Прошу всіх наших громадян, особливо цими днями, не ігнорувати сигнали повітряної тривоги. Будь ласка, це ваше життя, життя ваших дітей. А також чітко дотримуватися розпоряджень щодо громадського порядку та комендантської години, які є у містах і громадах. Обов'язково дотримуйтесь, будь ласка, заборони на відвідування лісів у тій місцевості, де були окуповані, які були окуповані. Там зберігається велика загроза від мін і розтяжок, які залишились після російських військових. Провів у Києві зустріч з міністрами закордонних справ 3 балтійських держав. Вони послідовно підтримують нашу боротьбу проти російського вторгнення. Підтримують з першого дня. Дуже вдячні. Сьогодні ми, як і завжди, ґрунтовно і з користю для України поговорили. Координуємо наші кроки задля посилення тиску на Російську Федерацію. І це особливо важливо саме зараз, коли в Європейському Союзі готують новий, вже 6-й санкційний пакет проти Росії. Також взяв участь у дискусії на дуже впливовому британському експортному майданчику Chatham House. Це одна з найбільш вагомих міжнародних платформ для політичної роботи і лобіювання в хорошому сенсі цього слова, корисних державних рішень. Представив нашу ініціативу оновлення глобальної архітектури безпеки, щоб в світі нарешті з'явились інструменти для реально швидкої реакції на будь-яку зовнішню агресію. Звернувся до парламенту Ісландії, подякував уряду, народу Ісландії за підтримку санкційних рішень, які необхідні для стримування Росії, а також закликав ісландських політиків, дипломатів, звичайних громадян допомагати у захисті нашої свободи. Закликав бути адвокатами свободи, адвокатами України, бо свобода у нас з ними спільна, як і з усіма іншими народами вільного світу. Саме в цьому надзвичайна сила української позиції. Ми захищаємось від нападу тиранії, яка хоче зруйнувати усе, що дає свободу людям і державам. І така боротьба за свободу проти тиранії цілком зрозуміла для будь-якого суспільства, в будь-якому куточку нашої планети. Вже ввечері підписав укази про нагородження наших героїв, наших хоробрих захисників і захисниць, тих, завдяки кому Україна вижила і міцно тримається попри все, що Росія намагається зробити, щоб зламати нас. Тож нагородами відзначені 203 військовослужбовця Збройних сил України та 16 військовослужбовців Головного управління розвідки. Ще раз вітаю усіх воїнів у піхотних підрозділах із професійним днем. Слава усім нашим захисникам, слава усім нашим захисницям. Вічна пам'ять кожному і кожній, хто віддав життя за Україну. Слава Україні!
And with that, we could, of course, hear great words from President Zelensky rounding out today's news. And so with that, that is the end of the Day 72 news. here on the Enforcer channel. So I thank you all so much for watching. If you did send in a live chat, make sure to stick around. We will answer every single one of them. And if you asked a question in the live chat with @Enforcer or @EnforcerMatt on it, we will, of course, answer as many of those as we can as well. Most likely it will be 3, but sometimes we do go well over that and go into like 5, 7, and sometimes 10, although that is incredibly rare. So with that, we're now going to move on to the question segment. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and first up, we have another super chat from Anthony Dobson, who puts in a $72 donation and says, "The reason I tend not to, excuse me, let me start over. The reason I tend not to ask super chat questions is number one, you've answered most over 72 days, and number two, I am making up for the time I watched but couldn't donate. The best source of info on Ukraine, bar none."
Well, thank you so much for the support, Anthony. And it's totally fine if you don't want to send in anything attached to it. It's just that it bothers me because I don't like that, just me, because I always want to be able to give back something to everyone who supports this channel in some way. If it's through the merchandise, if it's through answering a question, or, you know, just even interacting with the super chat in a way. I just want to make sure that I can do that, so that way everyone knows how appreciative I am of everyone supporting me and making sure that I can keep on doing this for all of y'all, you know, all the viewers. And so it's fine if you don't want to send in anything and ask a question or anything like that. It's just that I always wanted to make sure that my viewers do get something out of supporting this channel rather than just watching it, and maybe get a personalized answer to a question or something like that. I just want to make sure that no one's getting like shortchanged in a way. And I also don't want to go through like that usual spiel I give where I'm like, "Oh, I thank you so much for the support" and all that, because you know, like sometimes for the amount of support that's given like this, I just don't really feel like that's equivalent to how thankful I am. But I do thank you very much for the support, Anthony, and I do thank you once again for helping to run this channel. It is a huge deal, and it helps us to keep the lights on and make sure that these streams can keep on going. So I thank you once again, Anthony, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from BC Skyman, who puts in an unintentional $40, but nonetheless, thank you very much for your support. He says, "Did you hear about the 15-year-old girl from Popasna that drove a car 30 kilometers on her own with a shot in her leg? The child took out from under the shelling several more adults with severe injuries."
Yes, I did hear that story, but I didn't put it on here because I felt like that was going to be a little too straining emotionally on some people. I watched it and it was terrible. And I've shown some rough stuff on here. But one thing I want to do is make sure that war news is palatable for everyone. And that kind of stuff puts such an emotional, like that one put such an emotional strain on me that I could hardly watch that one without tearing up and nearly crying. So that's kind of my rule. If I'm actually nearly tearing up and crying over it, I usually don't include it on stream, or if it's something that kind of scars me looking at it, that doesn't go on stream either. So that way everyone who's on here for the news can watch it without being messed up for the rest of the night, just in case they have to go out to an event or something, and then they're thinking about this poor child and what they did. So I did see that, but I didn't put it here on the news just because I don't want to show people something that's that sad in a way. But I do thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, get ready, people. We have a $25 donation from Dick Cheney, also known as Will Riley, who says, "The Russian propagandists have taken to calling the UA soldiers orcs now. They have even said that they were created out of clay in the fires of Mordor. It also appears that Dick Cheney has taken the Markov on a hunting trip."
Well, thank you very much for the support. I think you've been trying to say Makarov, but yes, it does look like Dick Cheney has gotten a hold of the Makarov and taken it on a hunting trip and shot it straight in the face with a shotgun, because it doesn't look like it's doing all too well down there, and it will most likely be sinking soon. So with that, I do thank you very much for the support, and it is always wonderful to see Dick Cheney come back through and make his rounds here on the stream. For those of y'all who are new, may not know, Dick Cheney, I try and keep politics out of this, and Dick Cheney has been a political figure before, but in the terms that is presented through these super chats, always sent in by Will Riley, it really isn't political, so I'll let it pass because it's funny too. It's a funny joke. So, you know, that's the reason why Dick Cheney's brought up every night, just for y'all to know. And also to address the whole orc thing, I've heard a lot about the origins for that is actually Lord of the Rings, but I've never really watched Lord of the Rings, so I thought the whole entire thing, orcs, was some kind of abbreviation for some kind of saying about the Russians. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you very much for helping to keep this channel running. So I hope that addresses the comments in a way, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $22 donation from Gandalf TW, who says, "Greetings. Any new adventures during video recording to share? By the way, Netflix just released documentary on 3 Mile Island. Started watching and it seems pretty good. Check it out if you have the time."
Well, thank you very much for spoiling our video, man. But I mean, like, if that's not spoiling our video, what is? But yeah, it's kind of like similar. Our video is pretty similar in its premise, but there haven't been any new interesting filming stories to go. I'm actually going back up there again Sunday to do it again, because last time we went up there, and I can't make this stuff up. Last time we went up there, it said it was going to be partly sunny. We're like, yes, it's going to be partly sunny. It's going to be beautiful. We went up there, and as soon as we got up there, clouds were over the filming area all day long. So we tried to make do, and then we got home, and the lighting was terrible. So now I'm going back up there. This time I told Matthew he can stay at home. I'm going to do it on my own. I've set up a way where I could do that. So now I'm going to be holding a stick with a gimbal on it and filming it like that, because I made a promise I'm going to get the video out. I'm not going to sit here and keep on dragging this stuff out. And so I'm going to go up there on Sunday and film again, and make sure to get some quality film, some quality information. This time we're breaking away from a script. I'm just going to ad-lib talk the whole thing, hopefully not stutter through it, and get through the thing so that way we can have a nice video on this topic that I've been trying to cover for a decent while. Also, thank you, OG Wakanobi, for calling me a nerd. I am a nerd, so thank you very much for that, and I hope you all do appreciate me being a nerd. This has helped out a lot in my analysis of the Ukraine war, so I thank you very much for the support. And also, I will go check out that documentary on 3 Mile Island, because that was a very interesting occurrence, and it was one of the first nuclear meltdowns that ever occurred around the world, and it was just a little while before Chernobyl. So I thank you very much for the support once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, I want to recognize a $20 donation from Krister Peterson. Thank you very much for your continued support of the channel, and we appreciate it very much. Up next, we have a $20 donation from John Rutkai, who says, "Kupiansk, Ukraine. Love to get the arty in range of those crossroads."
Oh, I have to agree. Crossroads are one of the best places for artillery to hit because, of course, you can have traffic coming from two ways, and two ways is better than one. And when you have two ways instead of one, you can kill stuff more deader. So I can entirely agree with you that that would be the best thing to do, is get the artillery in range of those precious crossroads. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Don Willman, who says, "Have you read the blog of the Ukrainian Elena Filatova? I followed her for years as she and her friends like to dig through World War II bunkers and visit Chernobyl. Google her, but be prepared for graphic pics."
I have not actually seen that channel. I don't really see a lot of channels, actually. I'm kind of limited on my scope right now for sure, because I have a limited amount of time, but I would be interested in that. Of course, I'm a huge history buff myself. Unfortunately, I've had to skip out of some reenacting events because of the streams, but usually I would be reenacting around this time of year. This is reenacting season, so yes, I would probably be highly interested in seeing her videos and seeing what she's been around and looked at. So I'll definitely try and check that out if I can, and I thank you so much for the recommendation. That was very nice of you. And so with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, okay, here we go. The computer's going a little slow again. I know everybody's tired of hearing that, but here we go. $20 donation from Old Salty Squid, who says, "Thanks for all the time and effort you both put in. I really appreciate it. And that being said, how far along are you on the video? I can't wait to watch it in Slava, Ukraine."
Oh, no. Well, we're still pretty much at square one right now. I mean, like, I hate to say that, but that's really the honest truth. We're at square one. None of the footage has gone well. The last footage was poorly lit. It also had a pretty poor script, honestly. It was way too detailed. And so I'm going back up there again. And this time, just for y'all to get an idea of what I'm going to do now, and this will be the final one. Like, regardless of how it is, I'm just going to put it all together, edit the thing, and then upload it, so that way I can keep up with what I was saying. But this time it's going to be more in like a Bald and Bankrupt format, I guess you could call it, if anyone's format will be similar. But it will have some infographics in it and stuff like that to keep it interesting. So I thank y'all very much for the support. Of course, I'm working diligently on the video. One thing that's really kind of stretching this out, just for y'all to know why it's taking so long, is that the place we're having to go is constantly raining and it's constantly cloudy, and so there's never good enough weather to go up there and have good lighting and actually film this thing. So I'm having to like go through these windows of like 3 days where there's fair weather to go up there and try and film it, and then I come back, and if the footage isn't good, then I have to wait for the next window of good weather to go up there and do it again. So I'm sorry about that, y'all, that it is taking a while, but I promise y'all I'm working as much as I can whenever it's possible, with the, you know, weather permitting, of course, to get that thing filmed in good quality and finally get that thing up. So when it comes up, I hope that there's a lot of hype around it, because it's been taking a long time to film, and hopefully y'all will enjoy the video. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that kind of answers the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And just real quick, I just saw a comment, which is actually a pretty good point, from Kubato King, a longtime channel viewer, who says, don't let him go up there alone. You always need backup or another witness just in case. And we've actually discussed that, actually. I'm referencing the video. You know, when you're dealing with people that have a little bit of authority, there's always the possibility that something can go south. That's when you're dealing with the police or anybody. So, yeah, that's a very good point, and we're probably going to consider potentially me going up there after all, just to be on the safe side. But anyways, just wanted to call that one out real quick. Up next, we have a $20 donation from Alan, who says, sports schmorts.
Well, I have to agree. Sports schmorts. I mean, like, really, what is sports? You know, it's like it's guys playing, like, and this isn't degrading or anything, because it takes a lot to play the games on a professional level, like NFL level or MLB level or NBA level. But I mean, it's just a game. I mean, like, I'm not really into games all that much. Like, I play video games and stuff, but I'm not going to sit there and watch an esports tournament. Like, if I can go out there and play that game, I don't really care about watching other people do it, if you know what I mean. I'd rather just do it myself. So that's why I'm really not into sports. Although, if I had to say if I was into any sport, I'd be into baseball, because that's the sport that you can watch the least while being there, and just to kind of like use it as like a social event, I guess you could say. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that kind of addresses that in a way, and I have to agree, sports schmorts. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from William Allen, who says, can the Ukrainians press into Russia in the north? That would be fun for their troops.
It would be fun for the troops, sure, but I don't think they want to, because this is, after all, a defensive war, and launching some kind of offensive into Russian territory would eat up valuable resources that the Ukrainians may have in limited supply. So they may not want to do that, but it would, of course, be hilarious to watch the Russians freak out, as they would be completely powerless to stop this Ukrainian push into their country. But then again, that may actually lead the Russians into declaring an all-out war and dedicating all of their resources to this war, which then could put the Ukrainians on the back foot, maybe, and then we could see them slowly get pushed back until they're defeated. So always want to play it carefully. It is a defensive war, after all, and so if they're able to push them back out of Ukraine and its original borders, that's pretty much a victory in a way. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that answers the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Marley Barup, or rather a comment, actually, putting in a $20 donation, and says, thanks for all you do.
Well, I thank you so much for supporting this channel and also helping me to do all I do. Of course, without Super Chats, which is the only way we are monetized on this channel, except for the merchandise. By the way, that will be ending here very soon. I believe it's actually ending in like 10 minutes. So if you want to go get some merch and the limited edition version of it, that will only be up for about 10 more minutes. So make sure not to miss out. If you want some, go over there and get some like right now, because it's actually about to end. But yes, I mean, like, that's the only two ways we get support. I don't run ads on anything. That's why if you get on my summary for today, unless it was copyrighted, nothing. Like, you're going to go straight through to the video without any ads. There's going to be no ads in the middle. There's going to be no pop-ups. At least there shouldn't be, unless if YouTube is shorthanding me and they're lying to me, which hopefully they aren't. But I always make sure when I go through the options to demonetize everything. And so the only way I manage to keep the channel afloat is through the Super Chats and through merch sales. So I hope that people like that. I know that there's some people out there who are like, who cares, you know, just run ads. But I'm super aggravated by ads. Ads literally piss me off to no end. And so when I'm thinking about people like y'all watching these streams, I'm thinking about me and what I would like. And one thing I would love is if channels would stop running ads. And so I make sure not to run any. And if that means I do take a hit in overall, I guess you could say, income on this channel, I'm totally fine with that, because I would rather y'all have a much more enjoyable experience than ruin it just to get like an additional bit of income. It doesn't really matter, you know, if you know what I'm saying. I would rather y'all have a better time. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you so much for enjoying this channel. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $21 donation from Rated PG, who says, Enforcer, am having a great time here as every night. Any update on getting Operator Starsky on the stream? Thanks a ton for all you and Matt do.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And to answer the Operator Starsky question, I did reach out to him on Monday, but I have not gotten a response back yet directly from him. I sent out the question in one of his comment sections. Of course, you know, if he's me, he may be incredibly busy. You know, he is in the Ukrainian army and they are in the middle of a war, so he doesn't really exactly have time, I guess, to sit down and read the comments. But you know, I reached out to him. That was the only way I could find to reach out to him. And I haven't gotten a response back, although someone did send in a super chat the other day saying that he did say on the Shell's question and answer segment that he did see it and he would love to do it, but then I never got a response back from that person who was super chatting over Discord telling me his email and a way to reach out to him from there. So sadly, it hasn't really gone anywhere, but I am hoping that he can be on for Sunday or something like that. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have an $18 donation from Junebug72, who says, Happy Friday, I'm just saying hi. Thank you, and Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and Heroam Slava. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $15 donation from S. Moore, the Sockeye Salmon, who says, The Markov is swimming with the fishes. The old King Salmon says, Now that the Archer Markov is gone, the castle must fall. Sebastopol is next.
I hope it is. And I do thank you very much for the support, and also the usual sockeye salmon reference. It's always funny to hear. I like hearing it, honestly. Keep it up. And I do thank you so much for the support. And I can agree that seeing the Makarov sink is, of course, the death knell of the Black Sea Fleet. They're now losing their best ships of the line weekly at this point. They lost to Moscow, now they've lost to Makarov. Now they're going to go down the list of the other two frigates in the Black Sea Fleet that were the exact same class as the Makarov. Then they're going to go down to the remainder of the combat ships that are in the fleet, and then finally they'll be left with nothing. It's amazing to believe that the Russians are losing their navy to a country that doesn't have a navy. So thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $15 donation from, let's see. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to read that username, but you know who you are. They said, how about a sweepstake? Guess the total number of leaf springs visible during the May 9th parade.
Ooh, that's an interesting one, actually. I don't really know how that would work, but that is a pretty cool idea. I like it if it was a joke, and if it was a suggestion, it's an interesting one. So I thank you very much for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $13 donation from Martin Nielsen, who says, have you heard of the drones over Swedish nuclear power plants in the weeks leading up to the Russian war? And what is your comment on that? Thank you both for an important piece of work.
Well, thank you so much for the support. And to answer the question about the drones, I never heard about that, and I never heard about them flying over Swedish nuclear power plants. So sadly, due to ignorance on my part, I really can't comment on that all too well, because I would be pretty much basing all of my commentary on assumptions, and I don't really like to do that all too much unless if there is a reasonable basis for that assumption. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that all too well just because I don't know about it. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you so much for enjoying what we do here. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, well, first of all, let me just answer a question I saw in the live chat. Suzanne Forisepi says, are you guys doing this program from Ukraine? And no, we are not actually in Ukraine. We're actually sitting right here in Alabama in the United States. So no, not in Ukraine. But anyways, moving on, we have a $10 donation from Richard Bryan, who says, thanks for your hard work.
Well, I thank you so much for enjoying the amount of work I put into this. this takes a decent amount of time to set up and run. Of course, y'all watch the streams, so this is like part of the working day for me. But the streams can go on for like 3 hours, although this one's only going on 2 hours right now. But by the end of the night, it'll probably be up to 3 hours nearly. But yeah, it's a pretty decent amount of work, and I thank you so much for appreciating the amount of work I put into this to try and make sure that all of y'all can enjoy this. And also today, that little clip that I made took a lot longer than normal because I was actually having to put in a little bit of commentary for each clip, find them, compile them, and put them together. So that was actually kind of a reasonably long amount of time, but I was actually having a fun time doing it. And I think I may actually start fleshing those out even a little bit more because they seemed incredibly popular with new viewers on this channel and also a whole bunch of my return viewers like here in this live chat. So I think I'll make sure to keep on doing that. And I thank you all once again so much for the support and enjoying the stream. It's a very high honor to me that out of everyone y'all could watch, y'all are watching me and y'all enjoy the news from here the most. So thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from BC Skyman again. And thank you for your continued support. He says, do we have any idea how many Ukrainian troops have been killed? How much equipment has been destroyed?
Unfortunately, a lot of people do ask that question, but I can never really get a hardcore number on how many soldiers they had lost. I know at the beginning of the first week, they said they had lost 137 troops, and last we heard, which was about 5 days ago at this point, they had lost 3,000 troops. We don't know an exact number as to how much armor has been lost, how many aircraft or anything like that. The Russians don't even seem to be compiling those numbers either. They just seem to be coming up with mythical proportion amounts of losses. And so sadly, we don't actually have an accurate figure on how many soldiers and equipment that the Ukrainians have lost. So sadly, I really can't answer that question due to just a lack of answers for it. So I thank you very much for the support. I will try and get an answer to that eventually, but sadly, I think that will be an answer that we get after the war. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And real quick, Enforcer, we have a couple of common questions in the live chat I would like to see if you can give a quick answer to. People are asking what charity are we going to be doing this Sunday, and also on Monday, what time does the stream start?
So on Monday, the stream will start at the usual time. We may do a live stream of the Victory Day Parade in the middle of the day if it is up during then. I think actually I would have to record the entire Victory Day Parade and then upload it as a video because the Victory Day Parade will be happening at a very unusual time of day for us here in the United States, which is where most of my viewers are from. So I think that's probably what I'll have to do. But to answer the question about when does that stream start, it'll start at 10 p.m. Eastern time, the usual time for a stream, and it'll run on just like this one. To answer the other question, what was the other part of that question, Matthew?
What charity are we doing this Sunday?
So the charities are a really interesting subject. The thing is, I don't actually know what charity I'm doing right now either, because I try and get as close to the day of as possible to see what's happening on that day, and then that kind of actually leads me to deciding what charities get ran on this channel. Like, for example, if there's a large amount of refugee crises happening on that day, I'll usually try and pick an organization that's supporting the refugees or something like that, so that way the news is kind of a selling point for the fundraiser. And that's kind of how I try and work the fundraiser. So unfortunately, it kind of gives me a lack of like heads up time to tell y'all what's going to be the fundraiser, because I have to wait and see how that day's events are unfolding to then pick the fundraiser. So I hope that kind of answers the question of how I go through my selection process. I try and make it a lot more flow. I would try and make it flow a lot better, more accurate to what's happening at that time. So unfortunately, it doesn't lead me to have answers incredibly early on what fundraisers will be ran. So I hope that answers the question. Do we have any more from the live chat that have been commonly asked?
That's going to be it for now.
All right. And with that, how many super chats do we have left?
Let's see here. We have about, so far, about 14 left.
All right. And so do you think we should put a cutoff on these, or should we let them keep on going?
I think for now we should be good.
All right. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Wes A, who says, I love the content, Enforcer. I've been around from day 3. I don't post much, but I listen every single night. Do you think there is a high chance of the Russian Victory Day Parade being sabotaged by Ukrainian saboteurs?
Well, thank you so much for the support, and it's totally fine if you don't want to talk a lot in the chat. A lot of people just do get on here and they're very quiet. I noticed that thousands of people don't say anything the whole stream, so that's fine. But to answer that question, security in Moscow on the by and large is incredibly high. You wouldn't believe the security measures that Moscow normally goes through in peacetime, and so in wartime, I bet you they have FSB literally living inside of the walls of people's houses, and so it's going to be really hard for Ukrainian saboteur to do anything on the Victory Day parade. Well, actually May 9th in general, and specifically at the Victory Day parade itself. Although I won't rule it out, there may actually be insiders. This may be an inside job if there's anything that does happen conducted by someone inside the Russian government. So I'm not entirely sure. So I would say it's likely, but I wouldn't say it's going to be a certainty. I believe it's really more leaning towards the highly unlikely category than it will happen category. So with that, I hope I answered the question, and I do thank you so much for watching since day 3. That means you came in before the wave, and at that point I think I only had like 120 subscribers, which is insane to think that this channel has pretty much grown over the course of these streams to this height. So I thank you once again for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Mycroft, who says, I forget, did you cover the 11-year-old that was shot in the face? It was very tear-jerking.
I don't think I have. I think I've seen that before, but I didn't really cover it. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Keith Kitchhaber, who says, where are the made in Ukraine weapons actually made? Are they in danger of losing these factories?
Well, to answer that question, the made in Ukraine weapons are made in Ukraine. I don't really know exactly where, sadly. I know that there was a large tractor factory in Kharkiv that did most of the upgrading and renovating for Ukraine's tank force. We know that that place was knocked out nearly immediately at the start of the war. I don't really know about the Stugna factories, however, because we know that the Stugnas keep on being used, and it looks like they have a steady supply of ammunition for them, but I don't know where those are produced. We do know that they may not have interdicted those supply operations yet, or the production of that for that matter, because we actually haven't seen the Ukrainians stop using the Stugnas, and we know that the system is fairly new, so they haven't been able to build up a stockpile of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these missiles in such a short amount of time. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question in a way. Unfortunately, I really don't know a lot on that side of the logistics about domestic production of weapons of war inside of Ukraine. Unfortunately, that's something that's kind of being kept on the lowdown in terms of information. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope I answered that question the best I could. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Yoli H, who says, thank you, Enforcer, for everything you do.
Well, thank you so much for enjoying everything I do. I put in a lot of effort into it, and really the sole purpose of it is to make sure that all of y'all can enjoy this news. Of course, you know, war is never really an enjoyable thing, but I am glad that a lot of people do get on here and trust my streams more so than Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, the BBC, or anything like that. Y'all come on here, and this is like y'all's only source of news, and I hold that to a high regard, and I want to make sure that I try and let none of y'all down, and make sure that y'all get good information, and as much of it as possible. So I thank you so much for enjoying what we do, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Zyper Sniper 1, who says, just imagine the Russian parade getting attacked live on May 9th.
If it did, I would be busting out laughing. I know that, of course, people would get injured and killed, but still, when a war like this is happening and you have the Russians, which are so arrogant, right now they're talking about obliterating the British and the Irish just because, seeing something like that happen live on TV would be something for the ages. I think that would be something that would go down forever in history as one of the hugest blunders. But then again, that kind of happened in Iran. Someone pulled out a machine gun at a Victory Day parade in Iran and killed 50 soldiers in the parade. And that didn't really make a lot of news. But then again, Iran wasn't in a war at the time. So I thank you very much for the support. I can't entirely agree. That would be hilarious if something like that happened on the Victory Day. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, Jonathan White puts in a $10 super chat and says, as a former sailor, seeing Moscow covering up the deaths of sailors for lies irritates me. The crew of the K-19 gave their lives to prevent nuclear war, and these men are dying in a war started by lies.
I can't agree. And one thing that's crazy to me is that we've actually heard that the Russian government has declared that the Moskva didn't sink in a Neptune cruise missile attack or any sort of actual fighting. It apparently had a small fire on it, and it burned just a little bit, but it was enough to flip the ship over and sink it and kill a whole bunch of crew members on board. And so the Russians are saying that they're not actually legally obligated to pay the families of the survivors compensation for the loss of their loved ones that were service members on board the Moskva. And that just came out today, but I didn't put it on this news because we have 41 pieces of news to cover tonight, and that was one of the things that were becoming a little less important. It was just kind of something in the background. But that does give you an idea of how little the Russians respect their dead service members, because they've done that multiple times. They've done that with the Kursk, and they've done that with multiple other ships. If I was to go through history, there's at least a couple of others. So I thank you very much for the support, and I can entirely agree that the Russians' treatment of their dead sailors and soldiers is appalling. So thank you once again. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Marley Barup again, who says, "What the heck would the obscure ship being sunk? Marak? Sorry."
Barack Obama? Is he saying Makarov or Marak?
The text says Marak, but I'm not sure if that was maybe a misspelling.
Marak ship. Black Sea Fleet. Let's pull up the Black Sea Fleet. I'm going to go through this real quick. Go see if we can find just ships in the roster here on Wikipedia and see what we got. So Marak was the name?
Yes.
Let's see. Can't find a Marak. So I think he may be talking about the Makarov. Yeah, I think he was talking about the Makarov. So could you reread that question to me now that we've kind of got an idea he may have just misspelled Makarov?
So they said, "What the heck would the obscure ship being sunk? Marak? ? Sorry."
The obscure ship really isn't an obscure ship. It was one of the most modern and up-to-date ships in the Russian fleet. It was called the Admiral Makarov, and it was one of the brand new frigates that had been constructed and launched within the 2010s for the Russian Navy. This particular ship was actually launched in 2017 and has now been hit supposedly by a Ukrainian anti-ship missile and is now burning in the Black Sea. So I hope that kind of addresses the question, and I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Jan Nyholm, who says, "Greetings from Finland again, and thanks for giving daily information for us all." Excuse me. Have you heard of a website that has a countdown for destruction of Crimean Bridge? It's called crimeanbridgedown.com.ua.
I have not heard about that website, but I will try and take a look at it after the stream. And also, it's very neat to hear that you're from Finland. That's a country that I've kind of wanted to visit, although for some reason I feel like there's not really much to do up there. Because, it's just Helsinki and Turku, and then beyond that, it's just like forest and stuff. But I would like to go up there and see that, because I've always had interest with the Scandinavian countries. But to answer your question a little bit more, could you reread it to me, Matthew, just to make sure I'm getting it right?
Yes, they said, "Thanks for your daily information. Have you heard of a website that has a countdown for destruction of Crimean Bridge?"
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, there's not really much more of an answer I can go into on that. I haven't, but I will make sure to try and look into that after the stream if I do have the time. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question in a way. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Tim Swenson, who says, "Usually have to rewind and won't hear an answer as I will more than likely fall asleep. Thanks for what you do."
Well, I thank you so much for being here watching the stream. And although you may have fallen asleep, I do appreciate so much your support and also your viewership of the stream. It's of course a huge deal. And something I always find crazy is that right now we're getting near the lower energy side of the stream. We only got 5,500 people watching right now. But what's insane to me is that this is way larger in terms of live viewership just now, and this is on the lower end side of the stream, than any other stream that's doing the Ukraine war news. And I sit here and ask myself a lot because I really don't know the answer as to why. Do y'all like me? Do y'all like how detailed my news is? I don't really know what the answer is to it. Y'all like something on here better than what everyone else is doing, but I don't really know what. I'm just very happy though that a lot of people do enjoy this news and find it a very reliable source, and that this channel has really outlasted everyone and has come out as the sole news provider on YouTube in terms of live streams about the war in Ukraine. So I thank everyone so much for watching. I do thank you so much for the support. Hopefully you're not asleep at this point. Hopefully you are hearing this addressed to your comment. But I do thank you so much once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the question. I mean, we're going to move on to the next question. Sorry about that. I said we're going to move on to the question. All right, next one.
And next up, we have an $11 donation from Ben Tommen, who says, "Thanks for the good work, Enforcer. The Ukraine government created a website for donation, United 24."
Well, I have heard about that a little bit, but the thing is that it's not on the GuideStar system as far as I know right now. I will try and see, though, on Sunday, and if it is, that will be our fundraiser most likely. But sadly, I can only do fundraisers through the GuideStar program, and that's how they can show up on my stream as a YouTube give kind of thing. And if I don't do that, then it's pretty much just a normal night stream with super chats on and everything, and then there's really no fundraiser running. So sadly, it has to be run through the GuideStar program. But I will see if it can be, and I do thank you very much for the support and bringing that up to us. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Vasily, who says, "This is almost as good as the Car Guy show on NPR, 60 plus days and going strong with coverage. Keep it up. Archaeologists will mine the series to teach history on Mars."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I am glad that you have a very high regard for this stream. Of course, I'm not really going to go through this whole spill because I've said it a lot, and sometimes I feel like I'm trying to puff myself up saying this, but I do thank you so much for the support, and I do put a lot of effort into this, and I am glad that a lot of people appreciate it a whole load. So thank you once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have an $8 donation from Mountain of Entities, who says, "Hello from the Mountain of Entities channel. I chase ghosts, UFOs, and Bigfoot. Lots of footage."
Well, I do thank you very much for the support, and it is interesting to hear about your passion and hobby of looking for things that may or may not exist, much like Russian Victory. That largely doesn't exist at all, but it may exist somewhere out there in a parallel universe maybe. But I do thank you very much for the support, and it is pretty neat that you're out there finding Bigfoot. I too have been trying to find Bigfoot, and if y'all don't know, Matthew wears size 15 shoes, so that's Bigfoot.
No, I do not.
Yeah, wait, what size do you actually wear though? I forgot.
Like a 13.
Oh well, he's wearing the same size as me. We've got big feet.
I'm not like Shaq.
You know what they say about big feet, guys? Big shoes and big socks. So with that, I thank you so much for the support once again, and I hope that y'all know a little bit more about our shoe sizes. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and next up we have an $8 donation from Trolls Donder, who says, "Peace through superior firepower. Slav Ukraine."
Yes, I can entirely agree with that. I believe it was actually Admiral Horatio Nelson or Sir Arthur Wellesley, who was Duke of Wellington, who defeated Napoleon. I can't remember which one it was, but they were famously quoted for saying, "If you want peace, prepare for war." And that's a very adept description. To defend the peace, you must make sure that you have the ability to wage war to ensure the peace. So I can't entirely agree with that, but that does kind of sound like a 1984 kind of thing, where war is peace or something like that. But still, that really is the law of the land, is that if you want peace, you have to have the ability to defend it. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $7 donation from Parks White, who says, "Enforcer, how likely do you think it would be for the FSB or Russian military to depose Putin in a coup?"
Oh, that would be highly unlikely, considering that Putin is a former KGB man himself. You know that he knows how important the kind of a backroom espionage, spy ring group of people are, considering that he was one of them. And so I bet you he has personally overseen that part of the government to make sure that no kind of coups could be conducted from him. Although I could be wrong. Maybe Putin is stupid. He could be. I mean, like we've seen he's pretty stupid so far. Maybe he will surprise us even further. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about it, and I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the question in brief. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Zach Jeffers, who says, "What kind of punishment do you think the butchers of Bucha would face if captured? That is, if they're still alive by then."
Well, if they're captured, I believe that they'll most likely be facing prison sentences because the Ukrainians actually, I believe, have outlawed the death penalty. Let me pull that up. Does Ukraine have a death penalty? Capital punishment was abolished in Ukraine in 2000. Oh, that's unfortunate. Hopefully they make a special exception to this, and maybe they'll send them to the gallows, much like the Nuremberg trials led to for the the Nazi war criminals. So I thank you very much for the support. I think they'd actually just end up in prison, which I don't really believe is a fitting end for them. I do believe that they should face a firing squad or the noose for their crimes, considering how heinous they were. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I do hope that answers the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Robbie Dog, who says, "Robbie Dog is in. Let the fun begin."
Hey, thank you so much for the support, and it's good to know that Robbie Dog is here and the fun can begin. It is the question segment, so this is kind of like the most relaxed time of the stream for me. I'm not really having to like wreck my brain to remember the order I put the markers in and all that stuff. So I thank you very much for the support. And that's also something y'all may notice on stream, and I hope y'all do, is that I'll actually know most of the times, I do get it wrong here and there, but I'll actually know the marker I'm about to click on before I actually click on it because I remember what order I put them in. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that the fun has begun in this question segment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Zach Jeffers again, who says, "I always make sure to stand up and salute every time the anthem plays, and whenever the Azov generals speak. Got to give respect to the heroes."
I do agree. I don't exactly stand. It would be very hard for me to stand up in the kind of like setup I've got. But I always do make sure to give it a little bit of a moment of silence and respect. And whenever I play them on stream, I always make sure not to interrupt them at all. Of course, the intro and exit I don't interrupt because I'm getting ready for the stream. But whenever the commander and co-commander of the Azov regiment talks on film, I always make sure to not really interrupt it and just let it play uninterrupted, considering that they've been down there for 70 days fighting inside of Mariupol, and they deserve a high level of respect for going through that kind of hell for this long and still willing to go through it for another 70 days. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I do find it very interesting. The honor you do give them is very nice. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, Anthony Dobson puts in another $20 donation. He says, "It's your and Matt's authenticity that keeps us coming back. Having a mission backed by genuine interest always tops the ambulance chasers and click hunters."
Well, I do agree, and I know that there's a lot of people out there like that, like the computer to text voices that always talk about the Russian warship was sunk. Or, I mean, like not to beef with this guy or anything, but number 15, the Ukrainian nuclear incident. This Ukrainian nuclear incident caused a massive explosion. That guy, he also, I think he just does voice work, so I can't really judge him for it, but still, like, the channels that kind of do that stuff, I can agree with you that those are kind of hard to watch. And also, there's some channels out there, and I'm not going to say who, because of course I don't want to cause beef. I'm not really one of those people who are trying to go around and cause drama. I hate it. But there are channels out there who don't really give a lot of interesting commentary or draw any pictures, and I kind of find them lame, really. So I thank you so much for the support, and I do thank you for giving me the comment that Matthew and my authenticity is what leads y'all to come back, and it is nice to know that we are authentic in a way. So I thank you so much for the support. Well, actually, we're authentic all around. I mean, like, I actually believe in the stuff. I'm pro-Ukrainian, and I have been talking to my friend, and he's alive. But the other one, I don't know. I mean, like, it's been a week since I sent him a question of, "Hey, are you okay? I know you're in Kharkiv when this war started." He hasn't responded yet. So hopefully he is. Maybe he's just not answering his phone a lot. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Sean Collins, who says, "Good news, good vids. How many BLG Foots, or excuse me, Bigfoots, has Ukraine employed?
Well, I don't know about Bigfoots, but we do know that Ukraine has deployed Freddy Fast. I can't even go down that route. I'm sorry. That's getting too silly for me, but I don't know how many Bigfoots they've deployed, but I do thank you for the support, and it is a pretty funny joke. I do think that the Russians are being ripped apart, and once again, not to go down like the horrors of what I've seen putting together the news, but I did see one picture. Well, actually, it was a video of a pilot who had ejected out of his plane, and apparently he did it a little too late because he hit the ground and apparently broke his neck and died. But a group of 3 dogs were around him. There was a terrier, some kind of lab, it looks like, and then another lab, I believe, and they were eating him. And you know, like they had eaten him to the point that they were now like sticking their heads inside of his rib cage and like eating out his guts. It was really gross and sick to watch, but that's kind of something that I was thinking of. Can you reread that question for me? Because I completely forgot where I was going with that.
He was just asking about Bigfoots.
Oh yeah. That's kind of something that made me think about Bigfoot for a second. I was like, man, you know, if Bigfoot was real, he'd probably do that to someone. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that kind of gives you all an idea, again, because I did bring it up before, and I'm not trying to like play the guilt trip or, you know, play like a violin for myself or anything. But I have seen some pretty nasty things putting together this news. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea of what Bigfoot would probably do to someone if he was actually over there. So I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Vasily again. Thank you very much for your continued support. He says, Lucas Hoskins asked, maybe you should look into updating the front line near Kryvyi Rih. I'm curious too, anything in this area happening?
You know, I have heard that the front line here is not accurate, and I have referenced one map. Forgive me, I have sinned, but I did reference one map, and it did show that the Russians were kind of a little close to Kryvyi Rih. It looks like they made it up to Vysokopelia, but I can't ever get any video evidence from this area to confirm that. There's never any video evidence that comes out from the front line here. So sadly, I've never been able to adjust my map because over this entire war, there's never been video evidence to confirm that they're here. So, sadly, I can't really adjust my map until I get verifiable video evidence that they are in this area. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I have heard about that, and I have looked into it, but sadly, I just don't feel comfortable changing the map yet. So I thank you very much once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Ben, who says, Day 56, 1 hour and 13 minutes, was that scared Russian state news reporter. Ha 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 ha. Also, through decades, people will be watching every day of your stream.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I bet you the algorithms on YouTube will probably launch this thing up into everyone's recommend in like a year or two, and people will go, oh my god, wow, I didn't even know about this guy when this was happening. But yeah, that's usually how YouTube works. And also, to answer the other part, I don't have a clue what you're talking about with a stream on day 56, an hour and 13 minutes in. I totally forgot, honestly. That's a long time ago for me. Like, I can't even rake my brain to remember that much stream content. But it is cool to know that you're a huge fan of the streams, that you do know it. So I thank you very much for the support. And this kind of reminds me, like, whenever I say that to people, y'all ever noticed how a lot of actors in interviews, they act like they don't even remember the movies they did or what they were in? Like, now I'm kind of understanding where they're coming from, because you do so much stuff. And this is like, I'm running a kind of like a show, you know, and it's very hard to remember everything I'm doing and saying and stuff, that I kind of now understand where they're coming from whenever they sit there and they're like, so how did you like Jared Leto, you know, because I've heard the backlash on this one, so I know about this. Jared Leto, how did you like your role in Morbius? You know, and like, he's like, you know, I don't know, I think I'm gonna morb or something like that. You know, I kind of get where they're coming from now. But I thank you very much for the support, and I hope you do find that very funny. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Dan from Green Bay, Wisconsin, USA. And he shouts the question at us in all caps and says, do you think the Ukrainians could use all of the steel from the disabled Russian tanks to rebuild the steel plant in Mariupol?
Oh, yeah, like 9 times over. And then they'd have enough composite armor from the tanks to go and build Zelensky a perfect bunker that would keep him safe from the Russians for the rest of his life. I do entirely believe that that would be a possibility. But you got to remember, a lot of Russian tanks these days, and most modern tanks, are actually made out of a composite kind of armor instead of actual like rolled homogeneous steel like old tanks used to be from World War II. So I'm not entirely sure, but I do thank you very much for the support. And if I had to answer that question off the cuff without really a lot of information to back it up, yeah, I think they could. And so I thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from George, New York's premier contractor, who says, "Great job, Enforcer. Tell us about the new partisan movement of Free Russia in Russia."
I haven't heard about that really. I've heard about the Russian Legion in Ukraine, but I haven't heard about the Free Russian Legion inside of Russia. I do know that there are some kind of sabotage attempts and attacks going on inside of Russia, but I haven't actually gotten confirmed information as to who these groups really are and why they're doing it. Of course, they're doing it against the Russian government, but their actual reasoning, haven't gotten that, and also I haven't gotten the official names of their groups. So sadly, I won't be able to comment on that one too much due to ignorance on that topic, but I do thank you very much for the support, and if I can get any information and news on it going forward, I definitely will, and I will try and report it. It will maybe take some time, but remember, I always try and cover everything when it does cross the radar. So thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Mai Zhu Yang, who says, "If Ukraine has artillery or air missiles, how far can they travel, and why doesn't Ukraine use it to destroy the Crimean bridge that connects to Russia?"
Well, the main reason is that the main explanation that is, yes, they do have ballistic missiles that may have the range to reach down there. The thing is, though, oh, Harold Wass is about to get silenced by the Nightbot. Yep, there he went. I just saw that. I just looked over and saw that. But the thing is that the Crimean Bridge is probably heavily defended by air defenses, considering how important it is to the logistics of the southern front for the Russians. And so the ability of a ballistic missile to actually fly there and accurately hit the bridge without being shot down is probably an incredibly small percentage. So I believe that may be the reason why the Ukrainians haven't conducted it yet. They may be waiting for more accurate ballistic and cruise missiles to make their way from the west into their hands to use against the bridge. But at this time, I believe it may be unfeasible for them to actually try. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, OG Wakanobi puts in $5 and says, 7,000 watching and only 400 thumbs? Come on, people.
Actually, we've gotten 2,300 likes right now. I think you need to click refresh. I think it will show you the accurate number then. But yes, if you would all like to hit the like button, we have 5,000 people in here right now. And if all 5,000 of you hit the like button, you know what that means? That means we get 5,000 more likes. So if you okay hit the like button, it takes like just a second. Literally, it's like the quickest thing to do. It would mean a lot to us. It would help us out a whole load, and I'd be very appreciative. Like if you don't really want to give like monetary support and you just want to support the channel because you like what we do, hitting the like button is the best way to do it. So I thank you all so much once again for the support and everyone who does click the like button here in a second. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Smog, who says, "Run the parade with cutouts of destroyed equipment as each model rolls past."
Oh, they should. And I've had someone ask, hey, could you do a special video? Excuse me, I'm sorry, just yawned there. But someone said, could you do a special video on the Russians and their destroyed equipment that will be showed in the Victory Day Parade? And I would like to, but sadly I don't have the time to edit up something like that in between now and the 9th. So, I think that would be pretty cool, though, to do, and I hope someone does make a video on Victory Day of that, and I will 100% show the entire uninterrupted thing on stream, if possible. And so, I thank you very much for the support. That is a great idea, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Mr. Diggs, who says, "Doesn't Ukraine need a new form of government just to deal with Russia in the future? Even old occupied areas are now different. Quebec is still Canadian."
Can you reread that again? The Quebec is still Canadian part, like, threw me off 100%.
Yeah, he said, "Doesn't Ukraine need a new form of government just to deal with Russia in the future? Even old occupied areas are now different. Quebec is still Canadian."
I don't know how the Quebec is still Canadian part weighs into this thing, but I think that the Ukrainians government right now is operating just fine. A democracy is the best form of government. There's really no way to argue any other direction. I mean, like really honestly, when you look at it from a philosophical level, every form of government is really the same. Like, people talk about, and we're going to go through the arguments here for a second. Capitalism, it kills people, but communism kills people too, and monarchies kill people. Like all of them are an equal amount of good and evil when you really look at it. It's just different forms of how it's carried out. But I do believe that democracy is the best system for all people within a country to be heard and have their say implemented. I believe that direct democracies are probably the best form of that, but the best everyone can get mostly around the world is a representative democracy. So I don't really think they should change how their government is operated. I think it should stay just the way it is. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from OG Wakanobi again, who says, the U.S. military taught us to bury our trash decades ago. It's first grade SpongeBob.
I do agree. I mean, like, that's something you would think they would do, because letting your trash just be littered around will literally give them a path of where you're going. So I thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Vance Hicks, who says, Russians seem to be shocked about Ukrainian bombs landing across their border. If more ordnance came their way, would it help?
I think it would. If more ordnance landed within Russia, it's going to demoralize the Russians because, first off, the Russians are saying they're winning. But how are you winning when missiles are landing inside of your own cities? That wouldn't make any logical sense to anyone living there. And then the word would spread like wildfire because you really can't contain that kind of talk. And then the whole entire country would be demoralized, freaked out, and fearful. So I think that if they did ramp that up, that would help out, at least on the demoralization side of things with the Russian civilian populace. And so with that, I hope that does answer that question, and we're going to move on to the next one.
And just for everybody's information, we have just 4 super chats left, and then we get to the highly anticipated live chat questions. So next up, we have a $5 donation from Diffuse56, who says, who would win in a fist fight, the great Dick Cheney or Corn Pop?
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And if Dick Cheney and Corn Pop were going to go up in a fight, I would say, oh yikes, that's a tough one really to answer. But like Dick Cheney's got the shot. If he's got a shotgun, Dick Cheney will win that hands down. Corn Pop may be a bad dude, but no one's bad enough to deflect a 12 gauge to the face. But if Dick Cheney doesn't have a gun, Corn Pop's got a chance. And if Corn Pop has this bunch of bad boys with him, oh man, Dick Cheney's in for one hell of a ride. So it kind of depends on what Dick Cheney and Corn Pop are allowed to bring. So I hope that answers the question, and I thank you so much for the support. Honestly, I hope that everyone doesn't take that too poorly. It's a joke. Of course I do joke, and that's a pretty funny one. So I thank you very much, Diffuse56. That was pretty funny. I hope I did answer the question, address the joke in a way a little bit. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from CA Lags, who says saboteurs will be responsible for the paucity of Russian equipment in the victory parade.
Say that again?
I'm not sure what that term means. I'm not sure if that's actually a term or not. Paucity. They said saboteurs will be responsible for the paucity of Russian equipment in the victory parade.
I don't know what that means.
I have no idea.
How is it? Let me type that in. How is that spelled?
Paucity.
Wait a minute, I think paucity. The presence of something only in small or insufficient quantities or amounts. Scarcity. This man has a massive brain. We'll say that.
He is pulling out the big terms.
Read that again.
So, running it back one more time, we're just ignorant. It's actually a very smart term. He says saboteurs will be responsible for the paucity of Russian equipment in the Victory Day parade.
Well, I thank you so much for your facetiousness in commenting like that so expeditiously to pull out some terms that I hardly remember from the back of my head. But yes, I do think that they will actually be causing a lot of the scarcity of Russian vehicles during the military parade coming up soon. So I thank you very much for the support and also introducing us to a new word. This is kind of like the time that Kim Jong-un said dotard, and it made everyone pull out their dictionaries and be like, what in the world does that mean? So I thank you very much for that, and also letting everyone know what paucity is, which I didn't know. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $2 donation from Marley Barup, who says, upgrade for Matt's shoes.
Well, I think he's got some pretty good shoes, but he could definitely use some new good shoes. So I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And the last super chat of the night goes to Jan Nyholm, who puts in a $5 donation and says, yes, Finland is pretty much forest. I guess those 500,000 Russian soldiers in the 1940s were good fertilizer for our pine trees.
Oh, yes, I can entirely agree. 500,000 men dead in a small area of the front. Well, actually, really across the entire thing if you look at it. But yeah, I think they probably fertilized those trees pretty well. So, do have to agree. I think Ukraine will be a pretty forested country after this whole entire thing's over. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. Well, address the comment in a way. It is a pretty good one. And with that, we've reached the end of the super chats for tonight. We're actually going to put on cutoff on them as well. And I thank everyone so much for the support y'all put in. It helps us to run the channel a lot. If you would like to put in some support, sadly, we have passed the time. The limited edition run, I think, is off the store. Y'all can go check if you want, but if you do want some limited edition merch and it's still on there, I think it will be off the store within like 30 minutes or so, or it may already have been off of it. I'm not really sure right now, but I do thank you all so much for the support. And with that, we're now going to move on to 3 questions from the live chat, and then we're going to round out tonight's stream. And so with that, what is the first question from the live chat?
So the first question from the live chat is from one of our viewers here, Lee Mathers, who has a little check mark after his name. So I'm not sure if he's a big YouTuber or not. Maybe you've heard of him potentially.
Let me go to YouTube and pull him up. YouTube. Lee. Oh, look, the Enforcer streaming. Cool. I think I'll check that out. Lee Mathers. Lee Mathers. I can't find any on here that are big. What's his profile picture look like?
I can't remember, but I think it was just like a profile picture of his face.
Oh, I can't really find a big Lee Mathers. Oh, well. He's got a check mark. That's cool enough. But anyways, what's his question?
So his question is, Enforcer, what if Putin declares victory on June 9th and withdraws from Ukraine except for Luhansk and Donetsk? How great would that be?
Oh, that'd be fine. That's exactly how I'm really seeing this war pan out, is that everything will be status quo, and the Ukrainians will regain everything except for Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea, which is what they didn't have at the start of this actual war on February 24th of 2022. I think that would actually be one of the best case scenarios Ukraine could have, and then anything beyond that would be incredibly optimistic, like the Ukrainians managing to crush Donetsk and Luhansk and retake them, or retake Crimea as well. So I thank you very much for the question. I hope that does answer it brief. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Cam Kilo, who says, Enforcer, why Ukraine should believe Russian promises this time? They broke their promise so many times. Isn't there any concern it'll happen again?
Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of concern that the Russians never really keep any of their promises. But then again, you really don't have a choice, because if you don't want to take their promises, then you just end up with a war, still going on, and no one really wants that, and people would be more willing to accept someone's word, although it may be untrustworthy, just to try and end the war. So there's really nothing to guarantee that the Russians won't do it again. Most countries make treaties and then break them eventually, because treaties aren't forever. They eventually will kind of like wear out and expire, I guess you could say. So I'm not really sure. I mean, like, the Ukrainians will just have to take them on their word in peace talks, because that's the best they got, or this war will keep on going forever. And so with that, I thank you so much for this, well, not for the sport. I thank you so much for the question, and I hope that did answer it in the best way I could possibly do. And so with that, we're going to move on to the last question of the night. And so, we of course have to hype it up a lot, and of course, drum roll. What is the last question, Matthew?
And the last question of the night goes to William Mitchell, who says, Enforcer, how are the Ukrainians going to deal with this huge submarine fleet that the Russians have in the Black Sea? It just keeps getting bigger.
I know. I mean, like, it's like the Ukrainians are almost making them themselves. I don't know how they're going to deal with them. I mean, like, now that they're more and more, now that we know that the Moskva class submarines are now a thing, that's a really hard thing for Ukraine to deal with. I mean, like, those things can get really close to the coast and start inflicting massive amounts of damage. So I don't know how they're going to deal with it, but I do like the joke. And to answer that question honestly, the Black Sea Fleet only has about 7 or 8 submarines. 7 or 6 of them are Kilo class, and then one of them is a Foxtrot class. So they don't really have that high an amount of submarines, surprisingly, compared to what you would think. But I do believe that they will probably not be having an easy time using the subs either, because the Ukrainians probably have the ability to strike at those as well. So I thank you so much for the question. I hope that did answer it. And with that, everyone, that was the end of tonight's stream. I once again thank you all so much for watching. It has been a pleasure making the stream and reporting the news to y'all once again on day 72. If you are a new viewer and you've made it all the way through the question segment, you have stamina, and that means you must probably like the stream a whole lot. And if you do, make sure to subscribe and also hit the bell button, because these streams come on every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. That's the day I take off. Although on May 9th, which is coming up this Monday, I will not be taking that day off. I'll actually be streaming that Monday. So I thank you all once again for coming and watching the stream, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the Day 73 news, just 2 days away from May 9th. I thank you all once again. I hope you all have a great night, and Slava Ukraini, I just butchered that. Slava Ukraini, Rom Slava. Thank you all. Whoops. Thank you all, and take care. Good night.